GTA is one of the oldest running franchises up to date. Originally called Race and Chase, it was a standard game where players just had to drive around fictional cities and complete missions, but eventually they changed its name to Grand Theft Auto, as it required a lot of car stealing. It also has a long line of universes ranging from 2D to HD universes, with each having a multitude of protagonists. We'll be going through the stories of each games irrespective of their universes, but instead look at the timelines in which these games occur in. First off, we have the games in the 1960s taking place in London. Players can choose from a list of 8 protagonists and have to complete a set of 8 missions where they have to do a variety of tasks such as kill people or deliver goods. There's not really a story to these games, as the player just have to make their way up the criminal ladder. So let's move on to 1984, where some actual story takes place. GTA Vice City Stories focuses around Victor Vance as he tries to tackle the corruption occurring within the army so that he could earn money to pay for his younger brother's medical bills. Vic's sergeant, Jerry Martinez, gets him involved in drug trafficking and gets him dishonorably discharged. Vic then goes on to work for Phil Cassidy, and after getting acquainted with him, he meets his brother-in-law, Marty Williams, who abuses his wife, Louise. Vic kills Marty and begins a relationship with Louise, as well as taking over Marty's empire. Soon after, Vic's brother Lance arrives to help him run the empire so they both could pay their brother's medical bills. Together, they steal Martinez's cocaine, but after finding out that the drugs belong to a powerful crime family ran by the Mendez brothers, tensions break out between Vic and Lance once he finds out that Lance used up the cocaine, which they had returned to the Mendez brothers. Vic is then forced to work for the brothers, who betray him as well as kidnap and kill Luis. Vic then kills one of the brothers called Armando Mendez before making his way to the Mendez building and proceeds to kill Diego Mendez as well as Jerry Martinez with the help of Phil Cassidy and Ricardo Diaz. Lance arrives for backup, but he arrives late and offers Vic 20 kilos of cocaine for a deal ahead, which he denies as he wants to stay away from drugs. However, after some time, Vic gets caught up in drugs and sets up a deal with the Forelli crime family. As the two groups are about to exchange their goods, a small group of hitmen arrive and kill them, and Vic unfortunately dies. The only surviving members of this exchange are Tommy Vercetti and Ken Rosenberg, as well as Vic's brother Lance, all of whom escaped the attack, starting the events of Vice City. Tommy Vercetti, recently released from prison, is sent to Vice City by Sonny Forelli of the Forelli crime family to capitalize on the drug trade. Upon arrival, the drug deal goes wrong, leading to theft and murder. Tommy, left with nothing, informs Sonny and begins his quest to retrieve the lost money and drugs with the help of Ken Rosenberg, a lawyer, and several others he meets along the way, including Mercedes Cortez and the retired Colonel Juan Cortez. Tommy's investigation leads him to form an alliance with Lance Vance and take on various jobs from local bigwigs like property developer Avery Carrington and drug baron Ricardo Diaz. Upon discovering that Diaz orchestrated the deal's sabotage, Tommy and Lance plot to take him down. Tommy plans to gain Diaz's trust before attempting to kill him, but Lance loses patience and attempts to kill Diaz alone, which he fails, and Tommy is forced to rescue him, blowing his cover. Both head towards his mansion and kill him, so now with Diaz gone, Tommy expands his empire, but tensions arise with Vance as he feels underappreciated. Sonny Forelli, losing patience over his uncovered money, confronts Tommy, which escalates into a betrayal by Lance and a violent showdown resulting in the deaths of Lance and Sonny. Tommy emerges victorious, appointing Rosenberg as his right-hand man. In 1992, the Ballas planned to assassinate Sweet to drive the families of their leader and take over their territories. They used a saber to perform a drive-by shooting on a Johnson house. However, instead of Sweet, the Ballas killed Beverly, Sweet's mother. Sweet phoned Carl, his brother, to inform him of their mother's death, and Carl agreed to return to Los Santos for the funeral. Carl arrives at the airport and takes a taxi back to his mother's house. However, he is arrested en route by Frank Tempany, Eddie Pulaski, and Jimmy Hernandez, police officers from a corrupt LSPD unit called Crash. They steal his belongings and threaten to frame him for the murder of another officer, Ralph Pendlebury, unless he works for them whenever they summon him. After Crash let him go, warning Carl that they will be watching him, he makes his way to his mother's house where he reunites with Big Smoke. After he promises CJ that they will learn who killed his mother, the pair drive to the funeral where Carl reunites with Sweet, Kendall, and Ryder. Sweet is displeased with Carl's return, claiming that Carl ran away, and Kendall becomes annoyed with Sweet and walks off. Suddenly, the Ballas attempt to drive by, destroying Smoke's car, and after escaping the drive-by, Sweet, CJ, Smoke, and Ryder race back to Grove Street. Seeing the state of the gang, Carl decides to stay and help Grove Street back on its feet. Carl begins working with Sweet, Smoke, and Ryder to restore their gang in power. At first, he does small jobs such as spraying enemy gang tags, clearing the herd of crack dealers, buying weapons from Emmett, and performing drive-bys in Ballas territory. Eventually, he moves on to some bigger operations such as stealing weapons for fellow gang members from various sources across Los Santos alongside Ryder and accompanying Big Smoke on several deals. During this time, CJ also reunites with another friend and occasional gang member, OG Loke, who was just released from prison and asks for his help in killing his former cellmate. Afterwards, CJ helps OG Loke make a name of himself in the rapping industry by stealing some equipment from a beach party as well as the rhyme book of famous rapper Mad Dog, and killing Dog's manager. While attending a house party hosted by OG Loke, several Ballas attack Grove Street, but CJ and Sweet are able to fend them off. Later, Sweet asks CJ to spy on Kendall's new boyfriend, Cesar Villalpando, who is the leader of the Hispanic gang Varios Los Aztecas, which displeases Sweet. Despite his initial prejudices, Carl discovers that Caesar is a good man and genuinely cares about Kendall. Later, CJ competes in a car race against Caesar, after which the two men become good friends. At the same time, CJ is summoned by Crash, who force him to help them with their shady operations, such as burning down a house occupied by the Vagos and interrupting a meeting between some Ballas and the Russian mafia. Eventually, CJ successfully takes over the Ballas territory of Glen Park and kills a former Grove Street member who joined the Ballas named Little Weasel. Shortly after, Sweet informs Carl that several high-ranking Ballas will be attending Weasel's funeral, including Kane, and the brothers use this opportunity to kill them, weakening their enemy. After CJ takes over more territories for Grove Street from their rivals, Sweet decides to attempt to reunite the three sets of the families with CJ, Big Smoke, and Ryder's help. However, the meeting is ambushed by the police and the group barely manage to escape after a long chase. With the Ballas severely weakened, Sweet decides it is time for Grove Street to regain control of Los Santos and plans an ambush a major group of Ballas under the Mulholland intersection to end the gang war. Before he can join his brother on the attack, however, CJ is called by Caesar, who asks him to meet him in Verdant Bluffs. There, Caesar reveals that he had been investigating the drive-by shooting that killed Beverly and learned it was meant for Sweet. Just then, the pair spot Big Smoke, Ryder, Crash, and some Ballas exiting a garage containing a green Saber, the same car used in drive-by. This makes CJ realize that Big Smoke and Ryder have sold out Grove Street to the Ballas and have been working with Crash, as well as they were the ones who organized the drive-by and in an attempt to kill Sweet and wipe out the gang. CJ then also concludes that Sweet must be headed into a trap and goes to save him, only to find him severely injured. Sweet orders Carl to leave, but Carl refuses and kills several waves of Ballas. However, the police soon arrive and arrest both Sweet and Carl. Sweet is taken to a prison hospital while Carl is driven by Crash outside of Los Santos to the small town of Angel Pine in the countryside area of Whetstone. Crash warns Carl not to return to Los Santos and try to kill Big Smoke, otherwise Sweet will suffer in prison. They continue blackmailing CJ into working for them and task him with killing an informant under FBI protection who is threatening to reveal their corruption to the authorities. After the job is done, Carl decides to start making money and calls Caesar, who advises him to meet with his cousin Catalina. CJ meets Catalina and the pair perform various small-time robberies together, during which they enter a short-lived relationship. Carl is soon summoned by Tempany for another job and is introduced to a hippie named The Truth, Tempany's marijuana supplier. Tempany asks CJ to assist The Truth in producing a large quantity of drugs which he will be needing in the near future. The truth requests that Carl steals a combine harvester from a farm and deliver it back to him, promising to call Carl when the wheat company requires is ready. Shortly after, Carl calls Caesar and insists that he leaves Los Santos with Kendall as the Grove Street families and various Los Aztecas are both disbanded and their territories taken over by the Ballas and Vagos. CJ meets with Caesar and Kendall and rents them a trailer home in Angel Pine until he finds a better place for all of them to stay. Later, Carl begins competing in car races to earn money and meets Woozy Moo, the blind leader of the Mountain Cloud Boys subsection of the San Fierro Triads during one of the races. Carl also competes in a race against Catalina's new boyfriend, Claude, winning the deed to a garage in Doherty, San Fierro. After parting ways with Catalina, who leaves for Liberty City with Claude, CJ returns to the Truth, who informs him that a marijuana supply for Tampani is ready. However, the police finds out about the wheat farm after being tipped off by Tampani, forcing CJ and the Truth to torch the marijuana fields and destroy a police helicopter with a rocket launcher before driving to Carl's garage in San Fierro with the drugs. Carl meets Caesar and Kendall at the garage and finds out that it is derelict. He gets angry, but his sister calms him down and tells him that they can make it into a successful chop shop. Carl recruits some of the Truth's acquaintances, namely mechanist Dwayne and Jethro and electronics expert Zero, to help him get the garage working. Shortly after, Tampani calls Carl to tell him it is time to use the marijuana acquired from the Truth and order him to plant them in the trunk of a district attorney's car because he has been investigating him and Pulaski. Carl does as he is told and the attorney is arrested. Later, Tampani and Pulaski pay Carl a surprise visit, this time demanding that he follows a reporter who has been investigating them back to Los Santos, where he kills both him and a journalist he is meeting with. During his time in San Fierro, CJ purchases Zero's RC shop and helps him win an RC model war against his rival Berkeley and earns the trust and respect of Woozy and the Triads after helping them win a gang war against a Vietnamese gang called the Da Nang Boys. One day, Caesar tells CJ to inform him of a Ballas car seen leaving the Mulholland intersection and heading towards the countryside. They follow it to Angel Pine, where they take photos of a meeting between Ryder and some other men. CJ and Caesar soon learn that the men, Jizzy B, T-Bone Mendez, and Mike Torino, are the leaders of the Loco Syndicate, an organization supplying crack cocaine to Big Smoke, Ryder, and the Ball. Deciding to eliminate the organization, Carl first infiltrates it by offering his services to Jizzy. After several missions for the organization, CJ eventually earns their trust before turning on them and killing Jizzy. From Jizzy's phone, CJ learns about the Syndicate's next meeting with the Ballas, which he ambushes with the help of Caesar and the Triads, killing both T-Bone and Carl. Later destroys Torino's helicopter, seemingly killing him, as well as the Syndicate's drug factory, putting them out of business. With the local Syndicate eliminated, CJ focuses on earning money through his garage business. He buys the Wong car's dealership and attends the driving school to learn some advanced driving techniques that later help him and Caesar steal various cars for the dealership. Sometime later, CJ receives a phone call from a man using a digitally distorted voice demanding that he come to a ranch in Tierra Robada. There, Carl is surprised to find Torino still alive, who reveals himself as the caller. Torino explains to Carl that Sweet is in a prison upstate but is safe, and that Officer Ralph Pendlebury, whose murder Crash threatened to frame Carl for, was killed under Tampani's order due to threatening to bring him before the Internal Affairs. Torino proceeds to explain that he is an undercover government agent and demands that CJ assist him with several shady operations in exchange for Sweet's freedom. With no other choice, Carl agrees and performs several jobs for Torino. He is later asked to buy an abandoned airfield in the desert and learn to fly planes and helicopters, which help him with his next set of missions for Torino. And while at the airstrip, CJ is also visited by the Truth, who asks for his help in stealing a $60 million jetpack from Area 69. Carl then uses the jetpack to also steal a mysterious green substance from a military train and deliver it to the Truth, who lets him keep the jetpack before parting ways. Shortly after, CJ receives a call from Woozy, who is now a successful businessman and has opened a casino in Las Venturas, telling Carl to come visit him. CJ moves to Las Venturas only to discover that the casino business was not doing as well as intended due to facing opposition from the Leone, Sindaco, and Forelli mafia families of Liberty City. Carl agrees to assist and helps defend Woozy and the casino from rival mob families, including scaring their underboss into revealing what family he is working for and destroying a Sindaco-controlled plastics factory producing fake chips planned to be smuggled into his casino. As revenge, Carl helps Woozy plan a robbery of the rival Caligula's casino, which is run by the mob. He performs numerous jobs in preparation for the heist, such as stealing some dynamite, photographing the plans of the casino, stealing swipe cards for the casino from a croupier, setting explosives at the city dam that will destroy the generators and cut off the electricity, and stealing some HPV 1000 police bikes for the getaway, and hijacking an armored van using a Leviathan helicopter and respraying it with the Caligula's casino logo. Later, Carl receives a call from the Truth, who reveals that the previous night he traveled into the desert with a British band called the Gurning Chimps, but after smoking some peyote, they all fell unconscious. Truth tells Carl he is in Los Santos with almost no memories of the night before or how he got there. He then asks CJ to save the band's manager, Kent Paul, and the lead single, Macer, from the desert, which he does, bringing them to Caligula's casino, where Paul's old friend Ken Rosenberg is working as the manager. Seeing this as another opportunity to infiltrate, CJ begins working with Ken in order to earn the mob's trust, soon learning that Ken has been chosen by each mafia family as a neutral party to run the casino on each family's behalf, and that he is threatened with any war between the three mafia families begin. Soon, a conflict begins between the Sindaco and the Leone families, which escalates into a war between all three families, prompting the Leone family's Don, Salvatore Leone, to travel to Las Venturas and take over Caligula's. CJ offers his services to Salvatore, who employs to help him in his conflict with the other two families so that he would gain more control over the casino. He first sends Carl to kill several hitmen, arriving in the city by plane, and later to travel to Liberty City to assassinate the Forelli family's Don, Marco Forelli. During his mission to assassinate Marco, CJ also helps Ken, Paul, and Macer escape from the mob by faking their deaths and telling them to flee Las Venturas.
Hey, Carl! Great! Guys, it's Carl! Great! Fucking great! Fucking amazing!
I got a need for an accountant and a sound engineer, and I thought of you and Paul.
Fucking amazing! Paul's great with figures, and I'd make a fucking amazing producer. This is fucking great! It's amazing!
Yeah, whatever you say, man, but look, see you soon.
Fucking amazing!
Having earned Salvatore's trust, CJ decides it is time to rob Caligula's. Aided by Woozy, Zero, and the Triads, the heist is carried out successfully, weakening the mob and allowing the Triads to run freely their casino. Woozy asks Carl to become his business partner, and he accepts, with the pair starting to run the casino together. CJ receives a threatening call from Salvatore but ignores him, cutting all his ties with the mob. During his time in Las Venturas, CJ also meets the rapper Mad Dog and saves him from a suicide attempt, having fallen into depression after Carl unwillingly destroyed his career while helping OG Loke. Carl is later summoned to Tempany and Pulaski for one final job and is ordered to kill a DEA agent and collect a dossier. Carl collects the dossier, and Tempany asks him to meet him in a deserted village in the desert to hand it over. Once there, however, CJ is betrayed by Tempany, who leaves Pulaski to kill and bury him along with Hernandez, who secretly informed the internal affairs of his partner's corruption. Carl is saved by Hernandez, who is killed by Pulaski in the process before pursuing and killing Pulaski. With Woozy's casino and success, Carl finds the task of running it boring, as both he and Kendall wish to return to Los Santos. CJ is surprised when Mad Dog, having returned from rehab, visits him and asks him to become his manager and restore his career. Carl agrees and returns to Los Santos with Kendall and Caesar, where he reclaims Dog's mansion from the Vagos, to whom he sold it for drugs. With the help of the Triads, he then calls Ken Rosenberg, Kent Paul, and Macer, who have also arrived in Los Santos, and recruits them to work for Mad Dog and help him restore his career. CJ soon receives a surprise visit from Torino, who demands one last favor: to steal a military jet from the LHD-069 amphibious assault ship anchored at the Easter Basin naval base and use it to destroy a flotilla of spy ships. Carl does so, and Torino keeps his promise by having Sweet released early. Carl goes to pick up his brother and tries to impress him with all the businesses he got since he left Los Santos, telling him about his garage in San Fierro, the casino in Las Venturas, and the management of Mad Dog. However, Sweet is not happy with Carl's new lifestyle, which has led him to neglect the gang. To prove his loyalty, Carl takes his brother back to Ganton, and they work together to reclaim Grove Street from the Ballas, re-establishing the Grove Street families. The Johnson brothers then begin to reclaim their gang's turf from their rivals and attempt to track down Big Smoke. Learning that former gang member B-Dub is working for him, CJ and Sweet go to confront him in the hopes of learning about Smoke's whereabouts, but to no avail. Still, they manage to convince Big Bear to quit drugs and rejoin the gang. Later, CJ also has Sweet take over Idlewood from the Ballas and Mad Dog to exact his revenge on OG Loke, who goes bankrupt while his dog officially restarts his rapping career, taking almost all of Los Santos from them. Meanwhile, Tempany is arrested and put on trial for several charges, but is acquitted due to lack of evidence. This angers the people of Los Santos, leading to a citywide riot. During this time, Carl also has Caesar reclaim his gang's turf from the Vagos and continues taking over more territories from the Ballas and Vagos until the Grove Street families become powerful enough for Sweet to learn Big Smoke's whereabouts. The Johnson brothers head to Smoke's crack palace to kill him for his betrayal of the gang, but CJ apologizes to Sweet and convinces to let him deal with Smoke on his own to make up for all his mistakes. Fighting his way through the fortress, Carl eventually confronts Big Smoke and attempts to reason with him, but he opens fire on CJ. In the ensuing firefight, Carl fatally shoots Smoke, who admits to having betrayed the gang for money and proclaims that everybody will remember my name, Big Smoke, before dying. As Carl laments Smoke's death, claiming it was a waste, Tempany arrives to collect his share of Smoke's money from the drug trade and holds Carl at gunpoint to load the money into his briefcase, intending to use it to flee the city. He then attempts to kill Carl, but he survives. Tempany then attempts to escape in a stolen fire truck, but Sweet grabs hold of the truck's ladder, and Carl falls him in a car and manages to catch Sweet when he loses his grip. The brothers then pursue Tempany together, with Sweet taking the wheel while Carl shoots at pursuing police officers and rioting gang members. Tempany soon loses control of the fire truck and crashes off the bridge over Grove Street, and after claiming that he cleaned up the streets, Tempany finally dies as CJ, his friends and families watch. The Truth congratulates Carl on beating the system before they head into the Johnson house to celebrate. Carl, Sweet, Kendall and Caesar are next seen discussing what their future holds when Mad Dog, Ken Rosenberg, Kent Paul and Macer appear, with Dog Pro proudly showing off his first gold record. As his friends and family begin to celebrate, CJ heads outside, claiming he's fitting to hit the block, see what's happening. With Tempany dead, the riots come to an end, and justice is finally restored in Los Santos.
I have, over there.
I'll pass.
Carl, where are you off to now?
Finna hit the block. See what's happening.
Now comes the first GTA game ever released. The story revolves around a silent criminal hired by the Liberty City-based Vercetti crime family to assist in their various crimes as a hired goon and as a getaway driver for bank jobs. Later, they help taking down the new Guernsey-based Sonetti crime family's crime operations. Eventually, after attaining too much attention from the cops, Bubby books the protagonist a flight to San Andreas, where they are hired by a Chinese crime syndicate led by Uncle Fu, and the protagonist helps them in expanding their crime businesses throughout the city. They are later introduced to the Mexican gangster El Burro, helping him and his gang in several crime activities and killing suspected traitors of the gang. They later decide to move to Vice City, where they are blackmailed by the corrupt Vice Squad officer Samuel Deaver to do his dirty work, claiming he's got evidence of all of the protagonists' previous crimes that would put them in jail for life. They are forced to help Deaver start a war against the Brotherhood of Yah Army of Love, also known as the Rastas, a Jamaican gang who has been waging a campaign of terror for over 7 years. The gang's leader, Brother Marcus, eventually convinces them to join forces with the Rastas by giving them a lot of protection against Deaver and his squad. After doing several jobs for Brother Marcus and helping his gang, Brother Marcus calls the protagonists one last time, asking them to meet him to collect their retirement pay, implying the end of the protagonist's career as a criminal. Tony, Cipriani's boss, Salvatore Leone of the Leone family, introduces Tony to the family's couple, Vincenzo Chili, and persuades Tony to do some work for him. Later, Vincenzo informs Tony that former Leone member, now Sindaco crime family bartender Joseph Daniel O'Toole, or JD, wants to rejoin the Leones and explains that they will use JD as an inside man. Vincenzo's final request to Tony is to pick up his car, but is actually a police ambush set up by Vincenzo. Tony escapes the police and cuts his ties with Vincenzo. Tony begins to do some work for JD to pay off JD's debt to Tony and to further disrupt the Sindacos. Tony returns to see his ma and do some work for her to prove himself to her, such as taking an embarrassing photo of Giovanni Casa, taking out some triad shipments, racing and killing Sucho, and murdering Casa at sawmill. Ma is still not impressed and calls a hit on Tony, though Tony survives the hit and escapes. Tony starts to do some more work for Salvatore by persuading union boss Jane Hopper to obey Salvatore's demands, and Salvatore's wife, Maria Latour, then blackmails Tony to work for her to get her and Tony out of trouble, and later does a deal with the cartel for Salvatore. Tony does some more work for JD, who soon explains that the Sicilian Mafia are trying to broker a peace between the families. However, Salvatore smells a rat and wants someone to follow the Sicilian boss, Massimo Torini, and Tony follows his chopper and overhears a conversation between Torini and the Diablos, promising them Hepburn Heights if they help the Sicilians. Tony continues following Torini and hears a conversation between Torini and the Triads, promising them that they will be taken care of if they cooperate with the Sicilians. However, the Triads spot Tony and Torini escapes in his chopper. JD informs Tony that he is going to be made, and Mickey Hamfists joins Tony and JD to the ceremony in Harvard. Instead of the ceremony, however, Hamfists executes JD and explains to Tony that Salvatore could not trust JD as he could turn on the Leones sooner or later. Tony drives Hamfists home and dumps JD's body, and Vincenzo soon calls and requests Tony to meet him at the freighter. Tony at first refuses, but agrees after Vincenzo apologizes for his actions. Tony goes there only to find a trap set by Vincenzo, where he kills Vincenzo and all of his men. Salvatore soon informs Tony that the Leones are being pressured by the Triads and Diablos, and Tony then pushes them back before traveling with Salvatore to Staunton, after Salvatore explains that Mayor Roger C. Hole is going to blame Salvatore for everything, and Tony later kills Mayor Hole and takes his cell phone to Salvatore. After doing all this, Tony becomes a made man in the Leones, having Ma call that hit off Tony, and Salvatore soon explains that the Forellis had Mayor Hole in their pocket and there is a new election for mayor, and that their candidate Donald Love is competing Miles O'Donovan for mayor. Tony helps Donald on Salvatore's orders to combat O'Donovan's efforts, and Salvatore and Tony later kidnap Mayor Hole's assistant, where he reveals that the Sicilian Mafia controlled both Franco Forelli and the Forelli family, wanting a war between the mob families where they would take over after the dust settles. Tony later helps Salvatore and the Leone family weaken the Forellis to help gain domination. Tony later does some work for Leone family corrupt cop Leon McCaffrey in weakening the Forellis and the Sindacos and helping the Yardis, and later helps the Reverend with the Liberty Tree article by helping it grow in fame. The Reverend is discovered to be Liberty Tree reporter Ned Burner. Love soon tells Tony that O'Donovan has links between him and Salvatore, which is destroyed by Tony, even though his revealed friendship with Love causes him to lose the election. Salvatore is later arrested by O'Donovan, and Tony takes revenge on the Forellis for it. Salvatore soon reveals that Sindaco family leader Paulie Sindaco helped the Forellis and the Sicilians put Salvatore in prison, and Tony kills Polly before he can escape by sea. Tony does one last favor for Salvatore by destroying a Yakuza tank in their lockup. Donald Love soon calls Tony and requests to meet him at his flop house. There he explains that he has a plan to get his wealth back and needs the plans for Fort Staunton from his former mentor, Avery Carrington. Tony kills Avery and obtains the plans but is witnessed by Ned Burner and is killed by Tony on orders from Donald Love. Both corpses are obtained by Tony and taken to Avery's plane. Meanwhile, Toshiko Kaisen hires Tony to work against her husband Kazuki Kaisen, the leader of the Yakuza, by stealing their weapons, decimating their finances, and revealing his ties to Toshiko. Kazuki then decides to kill Toshiko and Tony but is murdered by Tony before he can do so, and Toshiko commits suicide to be truly free. Soon, Love introduces Tony to 8-Ball and they annihilate the Fort Staunton district. Love then hides out in the cartel mansion from the Colombian cartel and escapes the city with Tony's help. Soon, Salvatore reveals to Tony that he is being bailed out of prison, but the Sicilians don't want that to happen, so they can take over, and Salvatore's convoy safely makes it to the courthouse with Tony's help. Finally, Torini decides to kidnap O'Donovan to stop Salvatore's charges from being dropped. Salvatore and Tony chase Torini to Portland Rock, where Tony slays Torini, ending the crisis. Salvatore then reveals to Tony that Torini was the underboss and his elderly uncle was the boss. They have a meeting with him at Mama's restaurant, where Uncle Leone admits defeat at the very end and decides to return to Sicily in peace. Salvatore then thanks Tony for his effort and royalty. Grand Theft Auto 2 follows the story of Claude Speed, who is first seen at the church in Jesus Saves in Avalon, where he is introduced to the downtown district and the 3 gangs who control the district. The Japanese Yakuza gang led by the Zhu family, the corporates of the Zaibatsu Corporation, and the Loonies, a group of lunatics from the mental asylum. On his own, Speed decides to infiltrate all 3 gangs at the same time and work for each of them in exchange for money, and at the same time against them to earn respect from their rivals. He begins doing easy jobs for each gang boss via payphones in each gang turf. The Yakuza boss, Johnny Zhu, first hires him to pick up Dr. Zedzaki, drive him safely to the new Yakuza J-Lab, and after learning that the Zaibatsu Corporation have found out about its experiments, and helping the Yakuza inside man Hiroshi escape the local police after he illegally transferred money to Johnny Zhu's bank account. In the meantime, Speed is also hired by one of the Zaibatsu's corporation bosses, Trey Welch, who hires him to kidnap a man known as Shady, who sold Zaibatsu information to the police, and to crush him alive in a car crusher owned by the Zaibatsu company, and later delivering some brand new Zaibatsu merchandise to their dealers around town. Speed is also hired by Elmo from the Loonies gang to blow up the radio transmitter at the Futuro FM headquarters after the Zaibatsu company started advertising their new drugs on the station, and later hires him to use explosives to blow up a pizza cake restaurant, which ends up failing, although Speed successfully destroys a pizza cake delivery van shortly after. After earning enough respect from each gang, Speed is hired for more difficult missions. Johnny Zhu hires him to destroy the Loonies' happy gas tanks at the Sunnyside Asylum after they refuse to pay him money they owe to him, saving Gamma Ray from a group of hitmen sent by the Zaibatsu and eliminating a trader who has been selling his secrets to Zaibatsu. Trey Welch hires Speed to kill the boss of the Utes gang, who has been stealing and scrapping Zaibatsu cars for money, blowing up a garage owned by the Loonies gang after they slipped some of his narcotics in the water supply, and stealing a bank van in order to pay off a cop. In the meantime, Elmo tells Speed to meet Cosmo Trouble, who has a proposition for them. However, it turns out to be a Zaibatsu ambush. Ultimately, Speed survives the ambush and kills the Zaibatsu hitman. Elmo also hires him to destroy the Yakuza J-Lab and steal a Dementia limousine from a police impound garage. At some point, after earning maximum respect from each gang, Speed is hired for more risky jobs. Johnny Zhu hires Speed to steal a SWAT van from the local police in retaliation for them impounding his favorite car. However, the military force is sent to blow up Zhu's collection of exotic cars, but are stopped by Speed as he blows up their tank. Trey Welch later hires Speed to find the Zaibatsu biologist Dr. Cubana, who has been kidnapped and is being tortured by the Yakuza inside an armored car. He is told to blow up the car with Cubana inside to make sure he won't give any information about the Zaibatsu, and he is later hired again to steal used banknotes for Trey Welch to be used in his contraband drug operation. Elmo also hires Speed to kill various random taxi drivers around town and scrap their cabs for refusing to give him a ride, and after that he hires him to cause a gang war between the Zaibatsu and the Yakuza. Speed steals a Zaibatsu Z-type and uses it to run over and kill Johnny Zoo's men, and later steals a Yakuza Mayara and kills a group of Zaibatsu Z-men in the same way. Eventually, all three gang bosses found out that Speed has been working behind their backs all along, and they start hunting him around town and eventually find him. Ultimately, Johnny Zoo, Trey Welch, and Elmo are killed by Claude Speed shortly before he moves to the residential district. Arriving there, Speed decides to work for the gangs controlling the district and do the same as he did to the previous gangs. He begins working for the three gangs who control the residential district: the Rednecks gang from the mobile RV park led by Billy Bob Bean, the sex and reproductive system scientist led by Dr. Labrat, and another boss of the Zaibatsu Corporation, Red Valdez. Once again, Speed works for each of them and at the same time against them. Billy Bob hires Speed to cause some trouble on Zaibatsu and the SRS turfs, killing a group of each gang and destroy the gates of the village owned by the Zaibatsu Corporation. He's also hired by Dr. Labrat as the SRS Scientist Research Center to pick up 4 Zaibatsu operatives using a cab and use a crane to dump it in the sea with them inside. He also asks him to kidnap groups of rednecks and Zaibatsu Z-men and deliver them to the Scientist Research Center to be killed by Dr. Labrat's SRS clones as part of a test experiment. Red Valdez of the Zaibatsu hired Speed to steal a new flamethrower prototype made by the SRS and use it to burn several rednecks alive at the mobile RV park, and also steal a pickup owned by the redneck known as Jungle Montana and use it to blow up the SRS clone test center. After earning enough respect from each gang, Speed is hired for more difficult missions. Billy Bob hires Speed to swap a police chief's new Benson with another one rigged with explosives in order to kill him, kill Zaibatsu's well-known mercenary Flambo Cortez, and steal a tank from the Camp Banks army base to be gifted for Jungle Montana. Labrat hires Speed to kill several people at a village owned by the Zaibatsu, kidnap an old redneck known as Grandpa to be used in experiments, and protect the research center's generators from a group of drunk rednecks. Valdez hires Speed to infiltrate the SRS Scientist Research Center and destroy their cold fusion generators, steal contraband from both the SRS and rednecks which is being transported around town, and attract attention from the police forces in order to steal a SWAT van and a special agent car for him. At some point after earning maximum respect, Speed is hired for more risky jobs, where Billy Bob sends a group of rednecks to help Speed destroy 5 SRS Scientist meteors driving around their turf. Later, Speed is arrested on purpose in order to infiltrate the Alma Mater prison and kill a few prison guards inside, cause a riot, and open the prison gates as part of a revenge plan by Billy Bob. Labrat asks Speed to help him test a remote-controlled taxi on a test track inside the SRS Scientist Research Center, which he later uses to pick up and kill 3 scientists who betrayed the SRS. After that, he is hired to go to the H2000 Water Company's hydroelectrical power station and destroy 4 turbines and a generator. Valdez tests Claude Speed by sending him to the mall to kill a group of SRS scientists without vehicles, and later asks him to create a diversion by stealing a special agent car from the police station, then luring the cops away until the job can be finished. At some point, Billy Bob, Labrat, and Valdez connect the dots and realize they are being played by Claude Speed, and all 3 bosses go after him. Speed kills all of them in self-defense shortly before leaving the district. He then moves on to the industrial district and once again decides to scam the gang bosses around the area for money while also putting their gangs against the other ones in order to weaken them. He is hired by a Hare Krishna monk known as Sunbeam to dispose of his Zaibatsu construction firm, which is constructing a shopping mall near the Krishna's Vedic temple, and also to scrap 3 police cars as revenge by Sunbeam after the local police began halting the Krishna program of automotive clearance. Another Zaibatsu Corporation boss known as Uno Carp hires Speed to deliver 3 stolen cars and 2 prostitutes to the Zaibatsu Power Core safe house, where he also kills 2 Russian gangsters and starts a war between the Hare Krishna and the Russian Mafia. A Russian gang boss named Jerkov also hires Claude Speed to join forces with the Russian Mafia of anywhere, the Kolsky Bratva. He informs Speed that the R.S.L. Bowes Meat Company offered to supply Jerkov's restaurant with hot dog meat if he supplies them with a cheap source of meat, under Jerkov's orders. Speed steals a bus and uses it to kidnap a group of civilians from a bus stop. He then delivers the civilians to the R.S.L. Bowes meat processing plant, where he oversees the Kolsky gangsters, brutally killing the bus passengers in the meat grinder and gunning down the ones who try to escape. Shortly after, Speed delivers the processed human meat to Jerkov's restaurant. He also kidnaps and drowns a group of Zaibatsu dealers under orders of Jerkov. As the industrial district gangs began to trust Speed, he is hired for more difficult jobs. Under orders of Sunbeams, Speed kidnaps 4 groups of Kolsky's gangsters in order to convert them into Hare Krishnas, rescues a group of kidnapped Krishnas being kept hostage at the Decon labs, and stops a Krishna's brand master assassination after killing the hitman sent by Jerkov. Carbine hires Speed to eliminate a dealer working for the Russian Mafia and steal their truck loaded with contraband reactor fuel for the Zaibatsu, start a gang war between the Krishnas and the Russian Mafia by running over their members using their rival gang's cars and retrieving the Zaibatsu AI brain units from a Russian gang lockup. Jerkov also hires him to destroy 4 law enforcement vehicles in order to extort protection money from the city's emergency services, killing a group of Krishna hitmen and their leader Noah Bright, and destroying 3 tanks sent by the Zaibatsu to destroy the Russian Mafia cars after they lost a poker game against Jerkov. After earning maximum respect from each gang, Speed is hired for more risky jobs. Sunbeam hires him to rescue a group of kidnapped Krishna monks being kept hostage by the Zaibatsu at their power plant in Town Square, and destroy a power plant owned by the Russian Mafia. He also steals a tank for Uno Carbine, however it turns out to be a booby trap by the military, so he asks Speed to steal another tank from the army base, which he does successfully. In the meantime, Jerkov hires Speed once again to cause a massacre at the Vedic temple with the help of Russian gangsters Ivan and other members. He later destroys the Zaibatsu power core generators and captures an informant to be killed by Jerkov's son for spreading information about his mother. Eventually, all of the 3 bosses realize that they are being tricked by Speed and go after him. They all are killed by Speed, and shortly before he leaves town with all the money he earned by scamming every gang in the city. Mike is a small-town criminal working for the more connected Vinny. They decide to leave Liberty City together and try their luck elsewhere, but Vinny convinces Mike to do some tasks for their sometimes employers, the Mafia at Mama's restaurant in St. Mark's, prior to leaving. During one of these missions, Vinny is apparently killed in a car bomb, taking his and Mike's money with him. For this, Mike swears revenge and starts working for 8-Ball, an associate of Vinny's who offers to help with Mike's quest. Mike does various jobs for him before 8-Ball suggests that he work for a bartender named Joni, who is also connected to the criminal underworld. Mike does some work for Joni, including looking after his drunk girlfriend, while Joni helps looking into Vinny's death. Mike is slightly annoyed by Joni's paranoia, but it later proves true when Mike finds Joni has been killed while Mike was on a loan shark job. He then notices the assailants leaving the bar are the members of the Uptown Yardies. He then pursues the Yardies to Staunton Island. Eventually, he confronts the leader, King Courtney, who denies that he was responsible, saying that he is also looking for the killer because Joni owed the Yardies money. While Mike does some jobs for the Yardies, it becomes apparent that they are using him, and this is confirmed when Courtney sends Mike to go after Cisco, leader of the Colombian cartel and a rival of the Yardies. Mike, believing that Cisco is the culprit, faces off against the gang leader at a restaurant, and he finally warns Mike of Courtney's treachery. He then works for Cisco and the cartel and also finds himself helping the Yakuza when Asuka Kazan sends Mike to rescue her niece Yuka, who ironically was kidnapped by Mike while working for Cisco. Mike then finds himself working for the 2 leaders of gangs feuding with each other, but does the work regardless as both Cisco and Asuka agree to look into Vinny's death. He then unexpectedly finds Cisco dead and she speculates that the culprit is Vinny's and Joey's killer. Mike begins to pursue the assassin's car, not before being temporarily beset by men hired to protect the killer. He then eventually crashes the escaping car, and the criminal behind this is revealed to be Vinny, who faked his death and was conspiring against Mike the whole time. Vinny and his bodyguards engage in a shootout with Mike before Vinny is wounded. He begs for his life, but Mike refuses to listen before Mike's kill him. Vinny warns Mike that in the event of his death, any criminal greedy enough will definitely go after him, but Mike doesn't take heed to this. Later, Mike meets 8-Ball, who failed to warn Mike about Vinny. The two are suddenly attacked by the Colombians, who blame Mike for Cisco's death. After a lengthy fight, police suddenly attack and 8-Ball is arrested, setting the stage for escape in the Grand Theft Auto 3rd intro. But Mike manages to escape the arrest. Mike tries to get even with Cisco's successor, who tells him that King Courtney has called a head out on Mike for his money. Mike later goes across the city masquerading the Yardies hitman, and he meets Asuka, who helps to help him kill King Courtney. Mike and several Yakuza members meet at a Yardies hideout, and the Yakuza flee, forcing Mike to face King Courtney and his men alone. A climactic fight ensues, resulting in Mike nearly killing Courtney, who surrenders and begs for his life, and suddenly the LCPD raid the area, but Mike manages to elude them after a climactic chase. He then boards Cisco plane and flees Liberty City with Joy, his journey across the city complete. Chronologically following the events of GTA San Andreas, Catalina leaves with her boyfriend Claude to Liberty City. At the start of the game, the two are seen robbing a bank with Miguel, a Colombian cartel member, and their getaway driver, and another unarmed man. Amidst the chase, Catalina tells Claude that she is an ambitious girl and doesn't need him anymore, shooting him, killing the unarmed man, and leaving with Miguel and the money. Claude survives and is arrested for the robbery while crossing the Portland Island Bridge in a police convoy. The Colombian cartel ambushes them by blowing up the Callahan Bridge and then kidnap an old Oriental gentleman. Claude and another prisoner named 8-Ball free themselves while the convoy is ambushed and leave. 8-Ball introduces Claude to Luigi Gottarelli, and Claude works for him to prove himself useful. Luigi orders him to drive Joey Leone's favorite prostitute, Misty, to Joey's garage and earns Joey's trust by performing missions against the Triads and the Forelli crime family. Joey introduces him to Tony Cipriani, who Claude begins working for to exact revenge on the Triads after a failed assault attempt in a laundry shop. After proving himself, Claude is introduced to Joey's father and the head of the Leone family, Salvatore Leone. Claude is not powerful enough to stay for Joey, Tony, and Salvatore's meeting, so he is instructed to drive around Salvatore's trophy wife, Maria Latour, and saves her from a drug raid in a warehouse party she attended. Salvatore begins trusting Claude and confides in him that he believes that a bartender named Curly Bob is selling information about the Leones to the cartel in exchange for spank, an illegal drug. Claude follows Curly Bob and finds out that Catalina and Miguel are now leaders of the cartel. Claude kills Curly Bob, but Catalina and Miguel escape. Salvatore has Claude, with the help of 8-Ball, blow up the cartel ship with a supply of spank. For his last mission, Salvatore asks Claude to get rid of a car filled with murder evidence. However, as Claude nears the car's location, Maria pages Claude saying that the car is a trap and to meet her at the docks. Should Claude enter the car, it will explode. At the docks, Maria admits that she lied to Salvatore and said she was having an affair with Claude, which caused his rage. Maria introduces him to a Yakuza leader, Asuka Kassen, and they move to Staunton Island to escape the Leones. Asuka wants Claude to prove that his ties with Leones are completely broken by assassinating Salvatore as he is leaving Luigi's club. Claude works for Asuka against the Leones and the police, and she soon introduces Claude to her brother and Wakagashira Kenji Kaisen and the corrupt cop Ray Machalski. Claude works for Kenji against the Uptown Yardies and the cartel, while he also works for Ray to keep his connections with the Yakuza secret by making him do his dirty work. Ray introduces him to billionaire mogul Donor Love, and Claude begins working for him. He rescues the Oriental gentleman from the cartel after Love tells him that they are holding him hostage for some ransom. To lower the real estate price of the city, Claude starts a war between the Yakuza and the cartel by running over Kenji with a cartel vehicle. He also collects the packages from a plane hangar. However, the cartel have it taken back to their construction site headquarters and finds Miguel and Catalina there. Miguel attempts to negotiate with Claude, but Catalina shoots him in the back and escapes. Thinking that the cartel killed her brother, Asuka arrives to assist Claude and tortures Miguel for information. After helping Love by providing a distraction, Claude returns to the penthouse and finds that he and the Oriental gentleman have disappeared. He returns to the construction site and finds Asuka and Miguel both dead, with a note from Catalina saying that she has kidnapped Maria and will kill her unless he brings $500,000 to the cartel mansion. Upon her arrival, it is revealed that the exchange was an ambush and Catalina takes Maria away in a helicopter and orders them to kill Claude. Claude escapes and follows the helicopter to the dam. Catalina flies away, leaving Maria on the dam with her men. Claude kills all the men and shoots down the helicopter, killing Catalina. Leaving the dam, Maria begins babbling, and after the scene fades to black, a gunshot is heard, which is unknown if Claude shot Maria or merely fired into the sky in order to shut her up. In 2008, Niko Bellic, an Eastern European war veteran and former human trafficker, arrives in Liberty City aboard a cargo ship called the Platypus. For multiple reasons: to avoid an old friend, find the man who sold out his unit during the war, and to reunite with his cousin Roman Bellic, who invited him to come to the city in the first place, and in his letters told him that he was living a life full of riches, women, sports cars, mansions, and luxury. However, as soon as he arrives and meets with Roman, he discovers that all of his cousin's stories were lies. In reality, Roman lives in a heavily cramped apartment and runs a small taxi service. Niko begins working for Roman's company, soon meeting his girlfriend Mallory, who introduces him to her friend Michelle, whom he quickly begins to date. Niko also discovers that Roman is heavily in debt and has problems with the loan sharks, and protects him on several occasions, eventually killing Blida Morina, the head of the Albanian mob in Broker, after he and his associates attack Roman. Continuing working for Roman, Niko soon meets little Jacob, the underboss of the Yardies and a good friend of Roman's, whom he helps in dealing with several rival drug dealers, with the pair soon becoming good friends. It is also Jacob that Niko obtains his first weapon from. Niko later meets Vladimir Glebov, Roman's Russian loan shark, who gives him several debt-collecting jobs to keep Roman from sinking into debt. In Vlad's final mission, Niko is tasked with killing Vlad's associate Ivan Vechkov, but he may choose to spare his life instead, being the first character in the game whose fate can be chosen. Later, Niko learns that Vlad has slept with Valerie and executes him. Afterwards, he reveals to Roman his real quest from Liberty City to find and kill the man who betrayed his old unit. Shortly after, Niko and Roman are kidnapped by Mikhail Faustin and Dmitry Raskolov, the leaders of the Russian mafia in Broker and Vlad's superiors. Faustin is shown to be an absolute hothead but is not bothered by Vlad's murder, and ends up releasing the pair and employing Niko for several jobs. During his work with Faustin, Niko is introduced by Roman to his friend Brucey Klebitz and the internet. He performs several jobs for Brucey along with some car thefts, but eventually quits working for him, although the two remain good friends. Most of Niko's jobs for Faustin involve attacks against Kenny Petrovich, Liberty City's most powerful mobster. After Petrovich threatens to retaliate, Niko later meets with Dmitry privately, who explained that he needs to kill Faustin to make amends with Petrovich. Out of options, Niko assassinates Faustin after being promised to be paid for the hit by Dmitry. However, when Niko meets Dmitry at a warehouse to collect his money, Dmitry betrays Niko and sells him out to his friend and fellow Russian crime lord Ray Bulgarin, Niko's former employee and the same man that he came to Liberty City to escape from. Niko escapes from the ambush with Lil Jacob's help, but Dmitry's men soon burn down both Roman's taxi service and apartment in retaliation. After losing everything, Niko and Roman move to Bohan, where Niko begins working on the recommendation of Mallory for Manny Escuela, an ego-driven vigilante who's dedicated to cleaning up the streets of South Bohan. and Elizabeth Torres, a Puerto Rican drug baroness. Niko quickly takes a personal disliking towards Escuela, but working for Torres, he makes new criminal connections, including Irish gangster Patrick McGrary after saving him during a botched deal, and drug dealer Playboy X after assisting him, and the Lost MC vice president Johnny Klebitz on a botched heroin deal. Following this failed exchange, the bridges to Algonquin open, granting the player access to the district. Niko soon begins taking on jobs from Playboy, such as taking down a union site for his friend Yusuf Amir. Playboy later introduces Niko to his mentor Dwayne Forge, who was recently released from prison, whom he also works for and helps rebuild his life, quickly forming a bond with him over their tragic past. However, tensions between Playboy and Dwayne begin to rise, and both men eventually ask Niko to kill each other, leaving him with two possible options: murder either Dwayne or Playboy. Should he kill Dwayne, Playboy pays him for the head before cutting all ties with him, regretting that he hired Niko to kill his mentor. Should he kill Playboy, Niko becomes good friends with Dwayne, who lets him stay in Playboy's penthouse, revealing that he had a deed to it all along. Niko receives an angry call from Elizabetta, who tells him that little Jacob sold some of her cocaine to the Angels of Death and they had ripped both of them off. Niko successfully retrieves the drugs, but when he goes to give them to Jacob, he is surprised to find Michelle, who reveals herself as an undercover government agent actually named Karen, and brings him before her agency known only by its cover, United Liberty Paper. Niko is entrapped into working for the agency, and he starts with killing several known or suspected terrorists. In return, the agency clears his criminal record and promises to track down the traitor of his old squad. Niko later visits Elizabetta one last time, who reveals that she is under investigation of the police and fears that she will be arrested soon, just as Manny and his cameraman Jay Hamilton walks in and attempt to convince her to stop dealing drugs. In a drug-induced outburst, Elizabetta kills both of them and asks Niko to dispose of the bodies. Afterwards, Niko cuts all ties with Elizabetta, and it can be heard on the radio later in the game that Elizabetta was eventually arrested and sentenced to 300 years in prison on multiple charges. At one point, Roman suddenly disappears and Mallory informs Niko that he has been kidnapped by Dimitri's men. Niko is able to save his cousin, with his hatred for Dimitri only intensifying. Later, Roman's fortunes suddenly improve when the latter receives a large amount of money from an insurance claim he made on his destroyed business. Using the money, Roman buys himself and Niko an apartment in Algonquin, then restarts his taxi company. Niko soon begins working for the McReary family as he is blackmailed into helping corrupt cop Francis, whom he briefly met during his work for Manny, by killing several people who possess incriminating evidence against him, and assists Patrick on several robberies, most notably that of the Bank of Liberty. Following the robbery, the bridges to Albany open, unlocking the entire city, and Niko works for the rest of the McReary brothers, namely Derek, who took part in the heist and is a retired mobster, having recently returned from Ireland, where he ran to hide from the mob, and employs Niko to deal with several problems from his past, and Gerald, who planned the robbery and is the leader of the Irish mob, employing Niko to attack the Albanian mob to ruin the truce between them and the Ancelotti crime family on the Pecorino family's behalf. During this time, Niko befriends Patrick and develops a relationship with his sister Kate. Francis soon learns that Derek has returned from Ireland and, fearing that he might rat him out, hires Niko to assassinate him. However, Derek then calls Niko to tell him that he suspects Francis is trying to kill him and asks him to protect him. This once again leaves Niko with two possible options: kill Francis and Derek. Regardless, Niko then attends the funeral, fending off several Albanian mobsters who attack him in retaliation for Niko's attack on them earlier, and either cuts all of his ties with Derek or blackmails Francis into helping him escape from the police whenever he will need, which lasts only until the end of the storyline. He also learns from Patrick that Gerald was arrested shortly before the funeral. Through Patrick, Niko also meets Italian mobster and Pecorino family capo regime Ray Buccino, who employs him to assist him with a major diamond dealing scheme. First, Niko and several of Buccino's associates, led by Luca Silvestri, retrieve the diamonds from several trash bags, where they were hidden away by members of the Lost MC after being stolen from the nightclub owner Tony Prince. However, Luca and his crew betray Bocchino and plan to run away with the diamonds, forcing Niko to kill them in order to retrieve the diamonds. Niko then works with Johnny Klebitz to attempt to sell the diamonds to Jewish mob representative Isaac Roth, but they are ambushed by Luis Lopez, who steals the diamonds, while Johnny escapes with the money in the chaos. Niko later informs Bocchino of Johnny's betrayal, and he sends him to kill his best friend, Jim Fitzgerald, in retaliation, as well as Roth and his men, after they accuse Bocchino of the ambush and threaten to retaliate. In exchange for his work for him, Bocchino helps Niko track down Florian Kravik, one of the two survivors of his old squad. Niko and Roman confront Florian, who changed his name to Bernie Crane and has become a homosexual, and discover that he is not a traitor, meaning that the one who betrayed the squad can only be the other known survivor, Darko Brevic. Niko begins helping Bernie with several favors, first killing a man who has attacked him due to his homosexual nature. Afterwards, Niko learns that Bernie is in a secret relationship with Vice Mayor Bryce Dawkins, who is being blackmailed by several men. Niko accompanies Bernie to meet with the men, discovering that they are working for Dimitri, and manages to kill them. However, when Bernie later invites Niko to a peaceful boat ride, they are attacked by more Dimitri's men, whom Niko also kills. Afterwards, the pair part ways, not before Bernie makes Niko a gift, Bryce's Infernus. Niko is also introduced to John Gravelli, the elderly and dying Don of the Gambetti crime family, the most powerful of the 5 Italian mafia families within the Commission. By United Liberty paper, Niko performs several jobs for Gravelli, such as protecting a politician from Dimitri's men or destroying multiple drug vans belonging to the Enchilada crime family, which guarded by Dimitri's men. Grateful, Gravelli promises to help the paper track down Darko Brevic. Ray Bocchino later contacts Niko once again, offering him an apartment in Albany and introducing him to his friend and associate Phil Bell. Bell employs Niko for several jobs, such as stealing a truck full of heroin from the Triads and helping him steal the remaining drugs of the Ancelotti family from Dimitri's men, and later recommends him to his boss, Jim Pegorino. Pegorino is concerned about the recent loss in power of his family and, eager to join the commission, employs Niko to assist him on a deal with the Pavano crime family that would allow him to achieve this goal. However, the Pavano end up double-crossing Pegorino and attempt to kill him, but Niko is able to save him, and later is asked to attack a major group of Pavanos as payback. Over time, Pegorino grows more paranoid and believes to be surrounded by rats, asking Niko to kill his bodyguard, Anthony Corrado, who was revealed to be an FIB informant, and later Ray Bocchino as well, whom he suspected of being an informant. Around the same time, Niko visits Gerald McCreary in prison, who asks him to help Patrick kidnap Gracie Ancelotti, the daughter of Giovanni Ancelotti, the Don of the Ancelotti family, in order to later ransom her off for the diamonds, which Gerald learned came into possession of the Ancelotti family. Niko successfully kidnaps Gracie, and Patrick later sets up an exchange with the Ancelotti family, who sent Tony Prince and his bodyguard Luis Lopez, who stole the diamonds during Niko's original exchange with the Jewish mob, to save Gracie. The exchange goes well at first, until Ray Bulgarian arrives and orders his men to kill Niko and retrieve the diamonds. While Tony and Luis flee with Gracie and Bulgarian escapes, Niko and Patrick kill Bulgarian's man, but one of them grabs the diamonds and throws them into a passing garbage truck, leading to them being permanently lost. Afterwards, Niko cuts all ties with Gerald, who asks him to look after his family. Eventually, United Liberty paper track down Darko Brevic and bring him to the cargo bay of Francis International Airport, informing Niko before cutting all ties with him. Niko, accompanied by Roman, finds Darko, and after a tense confrontation is given the choice of either killing him, which leads to Niko feeling empty, or sparing him and letting him run away, which will cause Niko to feel better. After all the completions of all these missions, the ending of the game commences. Jimmy Pegorino calls Niko and asks him to meet him at the Honkers Gentlemen's Club in Albany. There, Pegorino asks him to conduct a heroin deal with Dmitry Raskolov, which Pegorino will pay Niko to $50,000 for. Niko, however, is reluctant to do so because of the animosity between him and Raskolov, and after Pegorino leaves, Niko phones his cousin Roman and friend Kate McCreary. While Roman encourages Niko to conduct the deal, Kate, however, urges Niko not to do it, claiming that he should not sacrifice his principles for money or take his chances with Raskolov. After this phone call is made, a green $sign icon appears on the map for the deal option and a red dagger icon appears on the map for the revenge option. To make their choice, the players simply enter the icon to start the mission of the chosen ending route. For the deal ending, Niko meets Phil Bell in a townhouse in Tudor. They drive to Port Tudor where the deal is to take place. It turns out, however, that Raskolov is after his revenge. He killed the people who Niko was supposed to make the deal with. Niko and Phil, in a third party's compound, decide to steal the money, with Niko planning to kill Raskolov later. They enter the warehouse from the roof and find themselves in a gunfight. After killing most of the men, they make their way to their room with the money, only to see someone else escaping with it. They chase the thief down, killing him, and collect their money. Niko takes Phil back to Tudor and both of them declare themselves out of the crime business. The day before Roman's wedding to Mallory Bardas, Niko phones Kate and informs him that he chose to do the deal with Raskolov, who then becomes angry at Niko for sacrificing his principles and refuses to come to the wedding. The next day, Niko goes to the wedding alone and witnesses Roman and Mallory get married. During the celebrations outside the church, a man walks up behind Niko and points a gun at him, claiming it is a gift from Dmitry Raskolov. Niko wrestles with the man and after a straight shot is fired, succeeds in forcing the pistol back and shooting the man in the head. The straight shot, however, had hit Roman in the chest and killed him. Enraged at his cousin's death, Niko shoots the man's body until the gun runs out of ammunition and then starts kicking it. Niko's friend Jacob restrains him and tells him to go home, promising Niko that he will find Raskolov. The following morning, Niko receives a phone call from Jacob, who explains that he has found some of Raskolov's men. Niko meets Jacob in Albany and they chase the men to an abandoned casino. Despite Jacob wanting to aid Niko in the fight, Niko insists he must do this alone, and he tells Jacob that if he really wants to help, he should find a way to help him escape. And after fighting through Dimitri's men, Niko finds his way to the casino. Inside the casino, he witnesses Dmitry execute Jimmy Pecorino, with Raskolov claiming he wants to keep the money for himself. He spots Niko and flees to the casino's roof, and on the roof he boards a helicopter. Niko grabs hold of the helicopter, but one of the Raskolov's men stomps on one of Niko's hand, causing him to fall off. Niko lands in the ocean and jumps into a nearby boat and resumes chase, and in the middle of the chase, Jacob arrives in the helicopter and tells Niko to get in. He stands up on the boat and pulls himself up into Jacob's annihilator, where he takes the wheel. After a brief chase, both helicopters crash on Happiness Island, where Niko chases and kills Raskolov for his betrayal and for orchestrating Roman's death. Jacob arrives and congratulates Niko for winning before both men walk away from Raskolov's body and leave the island. Following this, Niko receives a call from Mallory, who informs Niko that she is pregnant with Roman's child, and Niko promises Mallory that her child will never have to worry about anything. Niko later receives a call from Kate, who laments Roman's death and states that she'll be there for Niko if he ever needs her. If the player chooses revenge, then Niko betrays Pecorino and confirms Raskolov alone on the Flexibles ship docked in East Hook, which the heroine is being unloaded from. After fighting his way onto the ship, Niko confronts Raskolov in the ship's cargo hold, and after a brief gunfight in which Niko kills Raskolov's guards, Niko confronts a severely injured Dmitry, who claims that killing him would be a big mistake, but Niko ignores this and executes Dmitry. He then disembarks from the ship and phones Roman when he is back on the docks, claiming it ended where it began, and Roman expresses his disappointment at not getting the money, but appreciates that Raskolov will not bother them anymore. Phil Bell also phones Niko, telling him that he made the right decision and that Phil doesn't trust Raskolov either. However, Jimmy Pecorino and the Pegoronis are falling apart due to the deal not going through, and because of this, Phil and Niko cannot speak to each other anymore, and both men part on good terms. On the morning of Roman's wedding to Mallory, Niko phones Kate and tells her that he cut his ties with Raskolov, and Kate congratulates Niko for this and tells him that she will be coming to the wedding. He picks Kate up from her mother's house and they drive to the church. During the journey, Niko expresses his desire to leave his criminal lifestyle behind and that he also wants to get to know Kate better. Niko and Kate arrive at the church and witness Roman and Mallory get married, and during the celebrations outside, a black car drives past and an enraged Jimmy Pecorino fires at the crowd while shouting, "You double-crossing immigrant shit." Thus, car speeds off, and during the chaos, Niko reveals that Kate has been killed, with Roman telling Niko not to blame himself, but Niko lashes out and claims he is responsible. Jacob and Roman calm Niko down, promising they will find Pegorino, and Niko flees the scene and off-screen returns to the South Bohan safe house. The following day, Niko receives a phone call from Jacob and Roman, who explain that they have found some of Pegorino's men, and after meeting the duo, they chase the men through Alderney to an abandoned casino. Niko tells Jacob to lead Roman to safety before fighting his way through the casino and chasing Pegorino out of the building. Outside, Pegorino boards a speedboat and escapes on the water. Niko steals a dirt bike and chases the boat on the land before jumping onto an annihilator piloted by Jacob and Roman. After a brief chase, Niko disables Pegorino's speedboat with the annihilator's miniguns, while an RPG shot damages the helicopter's engine and forces it to land. Both parties now ending up on Happiness Island. Niko chases and kills Pegorino for killing Kate. Roman and Jacob tell Niko that it is over and Niko has won. Roman, Jacob, and Niko walk away from the body and leave the island. A few days later, Niko receives a phone call from Kate's brother Patrick, who claims that Kate didn't deserve to die and that the McRae men were the sinners. Niko also receives a call from Roman, who informs him that Mallory is pregnant and that if the baby is a girl, they will name her in Kate's memory. Johnny Klebitz, vice president of the Alderney chapter of the Lost MC, has been busy protecting the gang's business interests in Liberty City and is loyal to the chapter president Billy Gray, who was recently sent to rehab for heroin addiction after narrowly avoiding a 15-year sentence in prison. When Billy returns, his violent action towards the gang's rivals, the Angel of Death, causes a previously established truce to be broken between the two gangs, threatening the Brotherhood's survival. Johnny also works with Jim Fitzgerald to further sabotage Angels of Death's business at the behest of Billy Gray, which includes stealing Angels of Death's bikes to be sold for parts and blowing up Angel of Death's vans with pipe bombs. They briefly have problems with Jimmy Matthews and Ed McCornish, corrupt police officers who are attempting to extort them due to the stolen bikes, and later lures them into a death trap set by the Lost, killing them and their corrupt LCPD colleagues. To further complicate matters, Jason Michaels, a recently passionate member of the Lost MC, is killed in Broker during an attack on members of the Lost by the Angels of Death. Billy uses the opportunity to convince Johnny that the Angels of Death were responsible for the murder rather than the actual killer, who was Niko Bellic. In retaliation, the gang attacks the Angels of Death clubhouse and secures a large amount of heroin. The gang attempts to sell the heroin through drug dealer Elizabeth Torres, but the buyer turns out to be an undercover cop. Following the botched deal, Billy introduces Johnny to Thomas Stubbs III, a corrupt congressman who pays Johnny to help him stay on top politically. Eventually, Johnny's friend and treasurer of the Lost MC, Jim Fitzgerald, learns that the heroin was stolen from the Triads by the Angels of Death, so the gang attempts to sell it back to them, only to be betrayed. The police captures Billy, who is sent back to prison. Following Billy's arrest, Johnny becomes the chapter's new president. However, Brian Jeremy, the club secretary, refuses to follow, having been fiercely loyal to Billy and blaming Johnny for his arrest. Brian attempts to ambush Johnny and his loyalists using a peace meeting at the docks as a ruse, sending members of his rebel faction after them, and so Johnny is forced to later ambush Brian and members of his rebel faction at his safe house, either killing or sparing him in order to keep the gang afloat. He also begins working with people such as Uptown Riders members Malk and Deshawn, and is forced to get his ex-girlfriend Ashley Butler out of trouble on 2 separate occasions, rescuing her from violent drug addicts at a condemned housing project in North Holland, and kidnapping Roman Bellic at the behest of Dmitry Raskolov, to whom Ashley owes money. Johnny eventually comes to help out Pegorino's family capo, Ray Buccino, at the recommendation of his ex-girlfriend, Ashley. Through Ray, Johnny steals a large amount of diamonds from Tony Trent and attempts to sell them to the Jewish mafia with the help of Niko Bellic. However, the deal fails after Maury Green is gunned down by a sniper who reclaims the diamonds, and so Johnny manages to escape with the money after dealing with Ray's henchmen, planning to keep it for the Brotherhood. This results in an angry Ray kidnapping Jimmy, and torturing him while holding Johnny at gunpoint, but the two escape. Johnny fights off several hitmen working for Ray and ultimately turns from Ashley outside the Lost MC clubhouse that Jim was killed by one of Ray's men. He plans to attack Ray but is told by Stubbs not to, who reckons that Ray Buccino will either be locked up or dead within a month, and so instead focuses on Billy, who has agreed to testify against Johnny and Angus Martin so that he may be freed from prison. Johnny, Terry Thor plays Simmons, and other members of the Lost infiltrate the prison, and Johnny personally executes Billy. Afterwards, the remnants of the Lost burn the clubhouse down as it has sustained heavy damage due to the conflict with Ray Buccino. The group stands in front of the burning building contemplating the future, and later Ashley phones Johnny and tells him that she's admitting herself to rehab, with Johnny wishing her the best. Luis Fernando Lopez is being held hostage at a Bank of Liberty during a robbery involving Niko Bellic, Patrick McBreary, Derek McBreary, and Michael Keane. A local gun club owner lying next to him, Eugene Reaper, shoots and kills Keane and is then killed by the McBreary brothers in retaliation. The scene cuts to the aftermath of the robbery, Luis being questioned by the police about the incident before proceeding to Gay Tony's loft. On the way, he is nearly run over by Niko Bellic, returning from the robbery, and Johnny Klebitz, who rides past him. Rocco Pelosi, a senior Ancelotti mobster, and his accomplice Vance enter the loft and collect Tony's club income for the week as interest repayment on an outstanding loan. Tony then discusses with Luis his dire financial situation with his two clubs, Maisonette 9 and Hercules. In an attempt to curry favor with Rocco, Tony and Luis go to Chinatown to negotiate a deal with a senior triad. Billy Gray, president of the Lost Motorcycle Gang, is seen arranging an ambush on Johnny Klebitz and Jim Fitzgerald with the triad as Tony and Luis enter the rooms. The negotiations with the triad soon turn awry, and Luis protects Tony as they escape Chinatown. Luis visits his mother, who also has financial issues, and his childhood friends, Enrique Bardas and Armando Torres. Luis' mother does not approve of his lifestyle and would like him to attend to college. Enrique and Armando are Luis' friends who are heavily involved with the narcotics distribution trade. Luis soon becomes acquainted with Yusuf Amir, a real estate developer in Liberty City, and he helps Yusuf acquire several vehicles, including an experimental military-grade chopper called the Buzzard, an APC used by the News, and even a subway carriage. Meanwhile, Tony is headed in a downward spiral due to substance abuse supplied by his boyfriend, Evan Moss. Luis, Tony, and Evan head to the docks to buy $2 million worth of diamonds from a couple coming in on a tanker called the Platypus. During the exchange, members of the Lost, now led by Johnny Klebitz, formerly Billy Gray, attack and kill Evan and acquire the diamonds. Tony promises Luis that he will quit the substance abuse and introduces Luis to Maury Kibbetz and his younger brother Brucey. Maury is highly egotistical, constantly bullies and belittles Brucey, and is a source of irritation to Luis, who repeatedly stands up for Brucey. Through entering triathlons and undertaking dangerous police chases, Luis eventually managed to cancel Tony's debt to Maury. After Brucey finally retaliates and punches Maury, he later shows up at Maisonette 9 to thank Luis. Brucey leans in towards Luis after a series of compliments, strongly implying an attempt to hit on him. Luis strongly declines when Brucey awkwardly attempts to convince Luis that he was just testing him to see if he was gay. Tony and Luis rape Bulgarian and his associate Timur at Maisonette 9, who offers Luis some work in exchange for financial help. Luis helps Bulgarian eliminate some corrupt federal agents and acquire the Liberty City Rampage hockey team. Gracie Ancelotti gets Tony back on the drugs and is later kidnapped by unknown assailants. The Ancelottis establish that Gracie has been kidnapped because of the diamonds and are pointing the blame at Tony and Luis. Tony learns that the diamonds are being exchanged at the Libertonian and sends Luis to retrieve them. Luis ambushes the exchange, involving Niko Bellic and Johnny Klebitz, and escapes in the Buzzard, which has since been gold-plated. Bulgarian phones Luis, telling him to go to the roof of a building in Midtown Algonquin. As Luis uncovers the severed head of the cook from the platypus, Bulgarian explains that the Diamonds belong to him and accuses the cook, Luis, and Tony of colluding to steal them. It emerges that Bulgarian has led Luis to an ambush on the rooftop and he escapes alive. Gracie's father, Giovanni Ancelotti, then orders Luis and Tony to trade the diamonds with the kidnappers and Gracie back. At the exchange, Bulgarian shows up and orders his men to attack the assailants, Happy, McCreary, and Niko Bellic. Bulgarian flees the scene and amidst the chaos, diamonds fall into a dump truck heading in the opposite direction. Luis, Tony, and Gracie escape in a speedboat. Because of being preoccupied with recent events, Tony defaults on its debts and the city closes down all of his clubs as a result. Luis meets Rocco and Vince in the restrooms in Middle Park and they explain to him that he must kill Tony or the Ancelottis and the Russians will team up and kill Tony, Luis, and all of his friends and family. Luis shows up at Amazon at 9 and contemplates shooting Tony before pointing the gun at Vince and shooting him in the head. Tony wants Luis not to shoot Rocco as he is a made man. Rocco escapes and the Russians show up ensuing him a huge fight within the club, and Tony blames Luis for contemplating killing him and flees to his apartment to pack and move to the desert. Luis convinces Tony that he chose not to kill him because it is them against the world and that they need to resolve their situation. Luis ventures to Firefly Island to ambush a Russian heroin exchange, telling Tony to hide out by the Mono Globe in Meadows Park. In the fairground, Luis destroys the heroine and kills Timur, who mentions that Bulgarian is fleeing the city by plane within 2 hours. After an opportune phone conversation, Yusuf shows up in the buzzard and eliminates the pursuing Russians while Luis drives to the airport. Luis manages to board the plane and kills all of the henchmen on board. A vengeful Bulgarian emerges from the cockpit holding a grenade, threatening to blow the plane up if Luis kills him. Luis takes the risk and shoots Bulgarian, who drops a grenade which becomes live and explodes. Luis parachutes out of the burning wreckage of the plane to safety and heads to Meadows Park where Tony is sitting. Once there, they both tell Yusuf that they will not franchise the club since they prefer to keep it a family business. As for the diamonds, they are in the end found by a homeless man next to a trash can after Luis accidentally runs into him on his way to meet Tony in Meadows Park. Huang Lee, the spoiled son of a recently murdered triad boss, arrives by plane in Liberty City, bringing Yu Jian with him, a sword that Huang's father won in a poker game. Intending it to be used as an heirloom to deliver it to the new patriarch of the family, Huang's uncle Wu Kenny Lee. Shortly after landing, Huang's escorts are killed by assassins and he is shot and kidnapped. The assailants steal the sword and, thinking Huang is dead, dump his body in the water. Huang manages to survive and informs Kenny that Yu Jian has been taken. Kenny explains that he had intended to offer the sword to Sin Yaoming, the aging triad boss in Liberty City, as a means of securing a position as his replacement. Kenny has been dishonored and reduced in power due to the loss of Yu Jian, leaving him and Huang working to keep their businesses afloat. Eventually, Huang is contacted by Zhu Ming, a high-ranking triad member, and Zhang Zhaoming, House of Sin. Both men are also competing to be Sin's replacement and employ Huang to combat each other's efforts, and after Chen hires Huang for a deal that goes badly, LCPD detective Wade Heston, a crooked undercover cop under pressure from the Internal Affairs, intercepted Huang. Heston offers an alliance with Huang to find the men responsible for the theft of Yu Jian and the murder of Huang's father. Huang agrees and finds that Heston suspects a Korean gang allied with the Triads is behind the events. After combating the Koreans for a while, Heston plants a bug in the Koreans' headquarters, from which he learns that there is a splinter group inside the gang called the Wonsu No Down. Heston determines that the leader of the Wonsu is the one responsible for Yu Jian's death and is a police informant who has been causing trouble for the Triads. Meanwhile, Sin enlists Huang in finding the informant, only to then suspect Huang himself and attempt to kill him. Kenny arrives and convinces Sin to give them time to find the real rat, bringing haste to Huang's mission. Sin enlists Huang to investigate the two gangs who may be housing the rat, the Angels of Death, and the Korean mob. Huang gets into contact with Lester Lerock, a PI inside the Angels of Death, and performs his own work against a Korean. Huang is temporarily thrown off course by the intervention of Mafia member Rudy Davanzo, who tricks Huang into believing the mole is a Messina family member named Jimmy Capra. Sin later reveals Davanza's trickery and Huang kills him. Both the Koreans and the Angels are determined innocent, leading to a new course of investigation. Heston employs Huang to hack into the servers of the FIB in order to find the informant. The information revealed two names, both Zhu Ming and Chan Chao Ming, as having talked to the police about the triads. This is taken to Sin, who, disgraced that his own son is a suspect, instantly steps down as leader and appoints Kenny as the new head of the Liberty City Triads. Huang then executes both Chan and Zhu, despite each denying their guilt. Shortly after the killings, Heston, who informs him that the information that they recovered was fake and that he has learned of a meeting between the leader of the Wansu and his allies, contacts Huang. Huang and Heston go to the meeting and find Kenny, who admits that he was responsible for the theft of the Yujian and Huang's father's death. Heston and Huang pursue Kenny across town, cornering him at Sin's residence. Here, Kenny explains that he was tasked by Sin to retrieve Yujian, thus Huang's father would have to die for it to be passed on to him. They exchanged for a position underneath Chan. Kenny complied with this but attempted to have Yujian stolen to keep himself from such a dishonorable position and later framed Zhou and Chan to cover his tracks. After a final confrontation between Sin and Kenny, Sin demands the handover of Yujian. Kenny ironically responds by stabbing Sin with the sword as his way of presenting it to him. With Huang as witness to the murder and truth, Kenny engages in an inevitable final battle with Huang, who is the only one left in the way of Kenny's undisputed rise to power. Centered on a fountain with Kenny slashing away, Huang eventually kills Kenny, fulfilling his promise to avenge his father. Immediately, the IAD and FIB arrive to arrest Heston and Huang. However, Heston claims that he was in deep undercover and orders the arrest of everyone except Huang. On the floor and bleeding profusely, Sin praises Huang with the loyalty and ability to become his true successor as triad boss, to which Huang has no immediate answer. Heston orders the FIB cops to arrest everyone in the building, including Sin, but tells them not to arrest Huang because he is a good kid even for a rich snot. By completion of the story and locating the two Lions of Foe for the Rockstar Games social club, one can open up Shi Shan's missions, where he instructs Huang to steal a rhino to distract the police from planned robbery. However, the cops ambush Shin. Huang attempts to take him to safety, but he succumbs to his injuries. Before his death, he makes a revelation that he's the brother of Ling Shan, a girl who was murdered early on in the game. And so, Huang mourns for both of them. Finally, we come across GTA 5, whose story I will be telling through its three main protagonists. Michael was born in either 1965 or 1968, possibly in the Midwest. As a child, he did not have the luxuries and privileges that his own children have and grew up in the deprived environment of a trailer park with his parents. Like Trevor and Franklin, Michael had a tough upbringing due to his alcoholic and physically abusive father, who later abandoned him. Michael's mother, who also abandoned him, was told numerous versions of why his father left, which included but were not limited to him skipping town, being run over by a train, and joining the Navy. In his high school years, Michael was an acclaimed quarterback for an all-state football team, even putting an amazing performance during his games, and occasionally had his picture in the local newspaper. Still, his temperament issues and constant injuries ultimately forced him to quit. As a young adult, Michael began a life of crime. According to Michael, he was imprisoned twice by the time he was 20, and while in prison, he learned many skills, including using a tattoo gun by tattooing his name on his cellmate's butt. He committed his first robbery in 1988 and managed to steal $10,000 from a small business on the outskirts of Carson City. Michael perfected his criminal skills to become an expert marksman and efficient heist leader despite his failures and shortcomings. During this period, he associated himself with Lester Crest, an exquisite planner who would later assist Michael in planning out heists and other tasks. Michael met Trevor Philips while he was escorting cargo across the border. While Trevor waited to meet his unknown employer, he noticed not one but two dust trails coming up the road. although he was told there would be only one person meeting him with the cargo. Michael exited the first vehicle while an older civilian got out the second. As it turned out, the more senior civilian had been carjacked by Michael. As Michael tried to make a hasty escape on foot, the older civilian attempted to get Trevor's attention on what had just happened. Trevor approached the civilian and fired a flare gun into the man's eye, brutally killing him. He and Michael dumped the body into a lake afterwards, which Trevor later described as horrible as the flare was still burning inside the man's skull. Trevor and Michael both threw up since the stench from the burning corpse remained. After noticing how well they worked together, Michael brought an aimless Trevor under his wing as a partner for various crimes he would commit. They were both somewhat successful in their profession. Still, Michael claims that they were always impecunious and constantly on the run from the law, as Trevor's rage issues would cause him to murder someone in broad daylight, while Michael's circumspection, foresight, and distinctive style of coding from Solomon Richards films drew attention, which caused him and Trevor to quickly leave town after completing a job. A few years later, Trevor met a fellow crook named Brad Snyder and introduced him to Michael. Michael and Brad never showed empathy for each other and often expressed mutual distaste and distrust when working together. According to Trevor, Brad planned at one point to cut off Michael and work solely with Trevor, but Trevor refused out of loyalty to the man who gave his life purpose. The trio, along with Lester and a few other accomplices, committed robberies across the Midwest for a while. In 1991, Michael, Trevor, and Brad went to a strip club where they met a stripper named Amanda. Though she initially took a liking to Brad, she eventually came on to Michael. After flirting with each other, the couple started a romantic relationship using money earned from illicit activities. Michael bought Amanda breast implants, which would help with her stripping and prostitution career. This led to Michael creating his own prostitution racket. After a few months of dating, Michael married Amanda and had 2 children, Tracy and Jimmy, and lived at a trailer park in the Midwest. Eventually, Trevor began to consider Michael soft as he started to question his criminal lifestyle, fearing for his family. As a result, Michael began to dislike Trevor and his mentally unstable antics, feeling that he might one day hurt his wife and kids. At some point in 2004, Michael met corrupt FIB agent Dave Norton and made a clandestine agreement to cut ties with Trevor and Brad in exchange for the ability to disappear and start a new life. By paying Dave a monthly 5-figure amount, he would relocate Michael and his family to Los Santos and provide them with new identities to start over. As a result of this corrupt deal, Michael informed Dave of their upcoming robbery at a cash storage facility in Ludendorff, North Yankton. The two devised a plan in which Norton would wait for the trio near the gateway side with a sniper rifle and kill Trevor due to his borderline insanity, and whom Michael believed would come after him and his family should he find out about his role in the plan. Shoot Michael, who, while actually wearing a bulletproof vest, would pretend to bleed out and arrest Brad. The plan would benefit both Michael and Dave. Michael would walk away with a clean slate, and Dave would be given a career boost for taking down the supposed most wanted man in America. The staged robbery, however, was a disaster in execution after the guard at the front gate was shot in the head and killed. Trevor murdered a guard who snuck up on Michael, pulled off his balaclava, and held him at gunpoint, and when Michael, Brad, and Trevor were ambushed by over a dozen police officers ready to apprehend them, giving the robbers no choice but to shoot their way out. During the getaway, their driver was killed by pursuing police, forcing Michael to take the wheel and drive the crew to the ambush point he and Norton had agreed on, where he claimed there was a helicopter waiting upon their arrival. The plan almost failed after their vehicle was hit by a train at a railroad crossing as they attempted to avoid the roadblock of North Yankton. Things further deviated from the original plan when Norton accidentally shot Brad instead of Trevor due to him walking into the line of fire. Norton then proceeded to shoot Michael as planned, and as he pretended to bleed out, Michael begged Trevor to leave him behind. Enraged beyond sense, Trevor proceeded to shoot numerous arriving police officers and briefly take a woman passing by hostage before barely escaping the ambush with his life. Trevor was never caught by the police and eventually went into hiding. After the incident, Michael Townley was declared dead and given a funeral, but actually it was Brad who was buried in Michael's grave, having died from his gunshot wound. Michael attended Watching from a distance, news reports stated that Michael had been killed, Brad had been imprisoned, and Trevor remained at large. Michael eventually concluded that Trevor had ended up getting himself killed but never received confirmation of this assumption. Upon their relocation to Los Santos, Michael and his family moved into a mansion in Rockford Hills using the surname DeSanta, which was a long-term alias of Michael's. Michael's life as Los Santos slowly turned into a living nightmare. He grew increasingly unhappy from leaving his criminal life behind for the family life he believed he desired. He spent most of his days numbing his depression by either getting drunk, miserably lounging by his pool, or cheating on Amanda with another stripper, which Amanda eventually caught in the act. Michael's neglect and narcissism, along with his cheating, caused Amanda to philander on him as well and spend much of their savings on plastic surgery, while Tracy and Jimmy showed him very little respect as he occasionally chewed them out for their less than ideal lifestyle choices. Jimmy for being lazy, video game obsessed stoner, and Tracy for being a diva willing to do anything to become famous. Suffering from a midlife crisis and a deteriorating marriage, Michael began visiting Isaiah Friedlander, an overpriced psychologist who cared very little for Michael's problems. In 2013, 9 years after Michael faked his death and after another therapy session with Dr. Friedlander, Michael has a chance encounter with his future partner-in-law, Franklin Clinton, when he unknowingly points Franklin and his friend Lamar Davis in the direction of their repossession location. A short while later, Jimmy buys an SUV from Simeon Yetarian, an Armenian car salesman, who runs a credit fraud scam and sells the car to Jimmy on the agreement of him paying monthly installments of $5,000. After defaulting on a payment, Simeon has Franklin repossess the car from their DeSanta residence. Franklin sneaks into the property and finds Jimmy's SUV parked in the garage. As Franklin commandeers the SUV and drives away from the property, Michael, hiding under some blankets in the back seat, suddenly reveals himself and points a pistol against Franklin's head, ordering him to continue driving to the car dealership during the trip. He sarcastically offers to buy Franklin a drink later. Upon arrival, Michael, still holding Franklin at gunpoint, demands that he drives through the front window of the dealership, which Franklin reluctantly does. Michael pays Franklin to leave before assaulting Yetarian, threatening him with more violence if he tries to rip off Michael or his family again. A few days later, during a heated argument between Tracy and Amanda, Michael escapes to the poolside and lies on a lawn chair in his backyard with a glass of whiskey in his hand while listening to I Don't Care on his iPhone smartphone. As he is relaxing, he is suddenly interrupted by Franklin, who took up Michael's earlier offer of a drink. Surprised that Franklin took the offer literally, Michael agreed to take him to a nearby bar. On the way, however, Jimmy phones Michael and informs him that he tried to sell Michael's yacht, but the buyers hijacked the yacht with him still on board. Enraged, a furious Michael, with Franklin in tow, gives chase to the hijackers in Amanda's Sentinel and manages to rescue Jimmy but is unable to recover the yacht as the car's engine stalls, having sustained damage during the chase. Michael is furious with Jimmy but is also impressed by Franklin's actions during the event, having climbed onto the boat and rescued Jimmy while fighting off the attackers. Later on, Michael returns home to discover Amanda sleeping with her tennis coach, who escapes wearing just his underwear. Franklin shows up and the duo chase after the coach in a truck to a stilt house in Vinewood Hills, where Michael, fueled with rage and adrenaline, commands Franklin to hook the truck's winch around the supports of the house deck. Using the power of the truck's engine, Michael loosens the supports, causing most of the deck to collapse and crumble down the hillside, which shocks Franklin but also leaves Michael feeling satisfied with himself. During the drive back to Michael's house, Michael receives a call from the tennis coach and learns that the house does not belong to him but the mistress of Martin Madrazo, a powerful Mexican cartel leader. She sends a hit squad after Michael and Franklin for their actions, and the pair manage to fend the attackers off, but Madrazo and some of his associates arrive at Michael's house. Franklin informs Michael of the latter's reputation as Madrazo orders his cousin to hand him a baseball bat, which he immediately uses to lightly bludgeon Mike. Madrazo both offers Michael pay for rebuilding of the house at the cost of $2 million, money which Michael does not have, and threatens further violence upon Michael if he does not provide the funds before leaving. Michael realizes that in order to get the money, he will have to re-enter a life of crime and calls his old contact, Lester. Later, Michael is watching a noir-style movie, but Jimmy's loud swearing through his headset while playing video games distracts Michael from enjoying it, so he decides to venture upstairs to see what's going on. After Jimmy insults and tells him to leave, Michael throws a chair at Jimmy's television, which riles Jimmy up, furthering Michael's rage to the point where Michael eventually dares Jimmy to hit him. However, the heat quickly dies down and Michael explains that he strongly hates how Jimmy is wasting his life away by doing nothing productive. Michael convinces a reluctant and still angry Jimmy to drive to Vespucci Beach with him for some father and son time. However, even in the car, Jimmy still argues to and about Michael about his poor mental health, going as far as to blame his father for his own problems. Later on, they have a short bicycle race and finish at the Del Piero Pier. Annoyed that Michael forced him to do this, Jimmy points out a luxurious and large yacht in the distance and states that Tracy is on board helping shoot an adult film. Furious that Jimmy only agreed to hang out with him under Taylor Mortis, and enraged at the thought of his daughter hanging around with strange perverted men, Michael takes his shirt off and dives into the sea, swimming to the yacht. He eventually climbs aboard and very quickly begins to cause drama by throwing a portable speaker overboard and pushing a man off the side of the yacht. He takes Tracy back ashore and against her will on a sea shark, but not before two film producers give chase after him, leading to a shootout. Michael ultimately escapes and finally returns to dry land. Upon reaching the beach, Tracy and Jimmy angrily leave Michael. Michael eventually meets with Lester, who agrees to help Michael get the money needed to pay off Madrazo, but only if he decides to sabotage a prototype phone due to be unveiled by Jay Norris, founder of the social networking site Life Invader. Michael infiltrates the Life Invader office and meets a computer programmer named Ricky Lukens, who mistakes Michael for an IT technician and invites him upstairs to fix his computer. Michael has to close dozens of pop-ups and run antivirus software to get rid of the computer viruses, and then he finds the prototype phone and swaps the phone's batteries for the explosive device given to him by Lester. He returns home and watches the Weasel News broadcast of Jay Norris live on television, and during the broadcast, Norris reveals the phone, prompting Michael to call Norris on it, as per Lester's request. Norris answers the call, and the phone detonates next to his head, killing him instantly and cutting the broadcast short. After collecting information about the contents of the Evangelico jewelry store, Michael and Lester organize a heist, with Michael insisting that his new friend Franklin be involved, believing the latter will find experience beneficial. The heist goes smoothly and the debt owed to Martin Madrazo is paid off, with Michael and Franklin taking a small cut of their takings for themselves. Out in Sandy Shores, Trevor Philips, who was still alive the entire time, was watching the news report of the robbery and recognized Michael's modus operandi. Believing that either someone else was pretending to be the famous bank robber or that Michael wasn't dead, he sends his friend Wade to find Michael's whereabouts. Eventually, Wade informs Trevor that a man matching Michael's description was living in Los Santos. Trevor deduces that this man and Michael were the same individual after all and travels to Los Santos to find him. After several days of laying low from the jewelry store heist, Michael finds marijuana in the fridge and correctly assumes it is Jimmy's. He toys with him, causing an eruption of anger among the family. While this is going on, Trevor unexpectedly walks in, much to everyone's shock and horror. The tension is broken by Jimmy, revealing that Tracy has gone to audition for the TV show Fame or Shame as a dancer. Realizing that Tracy will embarrass herself in front of the nation due to her horrible dancing, Michael and Trevor rush to the Maze Bank arena. The two find Tracy and watch as she performs a sexually seductive dance, as the show's host, Laszlo Jones, begins to do a sexual pose behind her, angering both Michael and Trevor. The pair give chase to a terrified Laszlo in a hijacked phantom truck, pursuing him to the Los Santos River, where Laszlo's dilettante ultimately breaks down, ending the pursuit. Trevor forces Laszlo to take off his pants and dance for him as he films it on his smartphone, amusing Michael, and in the aftermath, Tracy angrily blames Michael for ruining her life, which doesn't seem to bother him, further straining his relationship with his daughter. Michael is contacted by Dave Norton, who knows Michael was the one who did the jewelry store robbery, and requests that they meet at the Galileo Observatory. Dave explains that Michael's decision to rob the Evangelico jewelry store has brought the spotlight on Dave in the FIB, and that if his superiors read his files and discover his deal with Michael, it could cause serious repercussions for the pair of them. Michael reluctantly agrees to do tasks for Dave to help keep his job with the SIB in exchange for covering up Michael's crimes. Michael's first task is to locate Ferdinand Kerimov, a suspected terrorist whom the IAA has declared to be dead. To do so, Norton knocks Michael unconscious to allow him to infiltrate the morgue. Michael regains consciousness during his autopsy and incapacitates one of the coroners. After finding the mortuary, Michael discovers Kerimov's identity tag attached to the foot of the body that was obviously not Kerimov's. Michael later escapes the morgue and phones Franklin, requesting that they meet, and informs him of his past with the FIB and advises Franklin to leave the city for his own safety, but Franklin tells Michael that he will stay and help Michael to repay Michael's faith in him. Steve Haynes, a highly decorated but highly corrupt FIB agent and Norton's superior, contacts Michael and demands that he team up with Franklin and Trevor to extract Ferdinand Kerimov from the IAA headquarters, which they do. Michael and Trevor are later summoned to a remote warehouse where Michael is briefed that he will accompany Norton to assassinate an Azerbaijani terrorist suspect, Tahir Javan. Wallace, Trevor and Haynes torture Kerimov for information on Javan's appearance. Kerimov provides information on Javan, who is later shot dead by Michael. Michael later finds his wife with her yoga instructor Fabienne LaRouche, who asks Michael to participate in their yoga session, much to Amanda's irritation. The session passes relatively smooth until Fabienne performs a sexual pose on Amanda, which angers Michael, who lunges at Fabienne. Angered by her husband's behavior, Amanda leaves with Fabienne, and Michael goes upstairs and asks Jimmy to hang out with him, wanting to get out of the house for a while. They meet a friend of Jimmy's at Burger Shot who gives them some cannabis and a drink, and on the way home, Michael drinks from Jimmy's cup and begins to feel drowsy. Jimmy reveals that he had the drink spiked with ketamine before pushing Michael out of the car and showing that he's taking Michael's car and some of the money from his bank account and is moving out. Michael has hallucinations of being abducted by aliens and falling from the sky before waking up in his underwear a few blocks away from his home. When he gets to the house, he finds a note from Amanda saying that his family has left due to Michael's poor behavior. Trevor later contacts Michael and Franklin to partake in his own heist, which involves stealing unknown cargo from a mercenary group called Merryweather Security. The heist goes as planned, and Trevor finds that he has stolen a super weapon that the government was planning to sell. Shortly after, Lester arrives and reveals that the weapon is highly dangerous, especially in the hands of someone like Trevor, and tells him that he must return it. Michael and Franklin agree, and Trevor, while furious that he cannot keep the loot, reluctantly allows it to be returned. After the heist, Michael, along with Franklin and Trevor, are called upon by Haynes and Norton. This time they must rob an armored truck filled with funds that the IAA has received due to drug sales. Unable to get any assistance from the corrupt agents, Michael decides they will approach the job with a classic blitz play. Despite being faced with some mild LSPD and noose resistance, the heist is executed smoothly. Michael then proceeds to deliver the funds to billionaire Devin Weston, who offers Michael a partnership with his idol, movie producer Solomon Richards. To get this partnership, however, he has to help steal several rare cars for Weston with Trevor and Franklin. Offered his dream job, Michael eagerly agrees and delivers the vehicles to Weston. Michael is thrilled to finally meet Richards, who hires him as an assistant. His first job is to convince Ancelotti crime family made man Rocco Pelosi to obey Solomon's wishes for how the actors should behave during the production of Solomon's latest motion picture, Meltdown. Michael stealthily climbs to the helipad where he beats up Rocco. He then performs dangerous maneuvers in the helicopter to convince Anton Baudelaire and Milton McElroy to follow Solomon's orders. This gets Michael on Richard's good side, and he is promised a role of associate producer for the upcoming film if Michael continues his good work. Martin Madrazo later summons Michael and Trevor to his home, offering them a job. Madrazo, who now sees Michael as a friend, requests that he and Trevor shoot down his cousin's private jet, which is carrying some sensitive files that Madrazo wants back. Michael does his part by bringing it down with a weapon inside a van, while Trevor manages to recover the incriminating files. After destroying the van, Michael finds out, to his horror, that Madrazo refused to pay the pair causing Trevor to attack him and kidnap Madrazo's wife, Patricia, after he witnessed Madrazo mistreating her. Knowing what Madrazo might do to them if he catches them, Michael agrees to hide in Sandy Shores with Trevor. Later on, Haynes and Norton summon the trio for another mission against the IAA. This time, the two agents plot to raid the human labs and research to steal a dangerous neurotoxin being developed there. To carry out this operation, the trio must secure funds to purchase a cargo bob and the other required equipment for the heist. Ultimately, the trio, along with Lester, settle on robbing the Blaine County Savings Bank in Paleto Bay, as it, according to Trevor, contains millions of dollars deposited there by Blaine County's corrupt law enforcement department, who extort money from all the local cannabis farms and meth labs. While planning the robbery, Michael and Trevor receive a call from Franklin, where they discover he's tailing the remaining O'Neill brothers, inbred, redneck meth dealers who are vengeful because of an earlier attack by Trevor on their ranch, resulting in the murders of most of the O'Neill family and destruction of their farm. While Michael and Trevor fly to Franklin's location, the O'Neills crash in the forest. Using a rifle fitted with a thermal scope, Michael shoots two of the brothers while Franklin locates and kills the final O'Neill with the help of Chop. Using stolen military body armor and machine guns, Trevor, Michael and Franklin and one gunman successfully rob the Paleto Bay Bank, taking a small cut each and giving the largest profit to Haynes or Norton so they can purchase the equipment for the Humane Labs robbery, much to the team's irritation. While awaiting this operation, Michael and Trevor carry out another job, raiding a Merryweather courier train that carries gold and priceless artifacts so that they can pay off Martin Madrazo. Trevor derails the train over a bridge in Rayton Canyon, and Michael drives into the river below to retrieve the merchandise, taking an ancient Aztec fertility statuette that Madrazo would value. Trevor is greatly dissatisfied with Michael's choice of taking. Still, he calms down once Michael proposes that once they get the FIB off their cases, they should carry out a heist they've dreamed about doing for years, stealing millions of dollars worth of gold bullion from the Union Depository. Initially, Trevor states that it can't be done, verging suicidal almost, but mutually accepts when Michael challenges him on that being a line he's afraid to cross. When Michael, Trevor, and Franklin meet with Haynes and Norton for the IAA robbery, Haynes verbally berates them for not bringing in 3 random thugs for the operation. With no other choice, Haynes and Norton are forced to join Michael in extracting the neurotoxin while Trevor and Franklin are on vehicle detail. They successfully retrieve the neurotoxin, but when the cargo bob takes too long to escape, Haynes shoots himself in the leg to prolong the IAA agents long enough for Michael and Norton to escape. After safely returning to Los Santos with Madrazo being taken care of, Michael receives an unexpected visit from Trevor at his Rockford Hills mansion, who pitches him with the idea of busting Brad out of jail. Michael's reluctance to go ahead with the plan leads to a debate during which Trevor finally realizes that Brad is in fact dead and buried at Michael's supposed grave in North Yankton. He hastily travels to Ludendorff with Michael in pursuit, where he confirms his suspicions. After a standoff at the grave, they are attacked by Wei Cheng's henchmen, who wanted to meet with Trevor for his role in wiping out the O'Neill brothers gang, who the Triads were planning to work with. The Triads incorrectly assumed that Michael and Trevor were gay lovers while surveying them during their exile to Sandy Shores. Trevor flees, leaving Michael to fend off the henchmen, causing him to be captured. Cheng later calls Trevor and reveals that they will kill Michael unless Trevor agrees to meet with him. Angry at Michael for his betrayal, Trevor tells Cheng that he loves Michael dearly and hangs up the phone, refusing to accept the demands. After Cheng learns that Trevor decided to let Michael die, then meet with him, he orders that he be put into a meat grinder at a slaughterhouse back in Los Santos. With the help of Lester, he is rescued by Franklin, and when Franklin presses him about what happened in Ludendorff, Michael opens up about his decision to betray Trevor in the past and defends that he had to make it for his family. He attempts to keep Franklin from trying further by reminding him of Western's car job, but Franklin informs him that he, Trevor, and a friend named Lamar Davis had already completed a job only for Western to stiff them on the payment. Confused, Michael assures him that he will speak with Weston the next time he heads to the studio. Michael revisits the movie studio to resume work with Solomon, and after witnessing Pelosi and his associate Gianni assault Solomon, Michael chases the two and ends up killing both of them. In return, Solomon keeps his word and makes Michael a credited associate producer in his upcoming film, much to Michael's overwhelming joy. As he exits the studio, he leaves a voicemail message on Amanda's phone to convince her that he is finally doing something good with his life. Michael and Franklin are called up once again by Haynes for one more job to break into the FIB headquarters and remove incriminating evidence against Haynes, as the arrest had caused Haynes' superior to start looking into his recent activities. This goes according to plan, except that while deleting the files on Steve, he also deleted the files the FIB had on Michael, meaning Steve no longer had anything to hold over his head. When Michael meets Haynes and Norton at the court center for debriefing, Haynes attempts to arrest him for covering his involvement in the raid. However, this drastically turns into a Mexican standoff when the men pull guns on each other, and when Steve's fellow FIB agent Andreas Sanchez is revealed to be working with a rival FIB team investigating Steve's actions. This further escalates with the arrival of said FIB team and IAA team led by the UL Paper Contact and a Merriweather team. Haynes is shot in the leg by an FIB operative but manages to escape, killing Sanchez in the process. Dave and Michael proceed to fight their way through the Merriweather mercenaries, FIB and IAA agents, and escape with the help of Trevor. Despite not forgiving Michael, he temporarily removes his vow of killing Michael as he needs his help in robbing the Union Depository. Having had enough of being alone, Michael finally seeks out and reunites his family. With his family back in the house and his involvement in Solomon Richards' upcoming film, things start to look positive for him until Devon Weston announces his intentions to exploit the movie studio's insurance policy by destroying the completed film so he could claim the insurance money, ultimately closing the studio, which he would promptly buy and demolish to build condos on the site. Infuriated upon learning of Weston's intentions, Michael chases the former's lawyer to the airport to try and retrieve the film's master copy. During the chase, she is accidentally killed after being sucked into a jet engine, and Michael recovers the film, which Solomon arranges a premiere so it cannot be tampered with further. At the premiere for Meltdown, Weston, furious over his lawyer's death, unexpectedly shows up and cryptically reveals his plans to kill Michael's family in revenge for Michael's actions, so he rushes home to find Merriweather operatives holding his family at gunpoint. He kills the intruders and protects his house from oncoming mercenaries until the coast is clear. The next morning, Michael calls Lester from the Del Piero Pier, enraged that Weston sent Merriweather to his house to kill his family, and reveals that he asked his family to move out for a few days for their own protection. Despite this incident, Michael is still confident in performing their heist from the Union Depository, which they promptly do. After helping Franklin deal with an incident where his friend Lamar was kidnapped by a rival gang, the heist is successful. Michael, Franklin, Trevor, Lester, and their crew manage to steal over $200 million worth of gold bullion. Around this time, Michael goes to a session with Dr. Friedlander, where he learns to his fury that his psychiatrist has been using details from his sessions to make himself famous without his knowledge. Furious, Michael attacks him, chasing him out of town or killing him. Following the heist, Franklin is visited by both Steve Haynes and Devon Weston. Haynes wants Franklin to kill Trevor due to his unpredictable nature, while Weston asks that Franklin kill Michael instead because Weston still wants revenge on him. Franklin can either choose one of these options or team up with Michael and Trevor once more, and with the help of Lester, take down their enemies once and for all. Ultimately, Franklin chooses option C. Michael meets Franklin and Trevor to fight off Merriweather and corrupt FIB agents at a foundry. Once all of the mercenaries and agents are taken out, Michael has Trevor and Franklin kill Steve Haynes and Wei Chen, respectively. Meanwhile, he kills Franklin's enemies, Stretch, to not implicate Franklin from its effects. Afterwards, Michael meets Franklin and Trevor, the latter having kidnapped Weston and locked him in the trunk of his car at the foothills of Mount Chiliad. After taunting Weston about their apparent victory, the trio pushed the car off the cliff and into the ocean, destroying the vehicle and killing Weston. After making peace with Trevor, Michael realizes he is getting too old to be a criminal. Just before leaving, Michael, Franklin, and Trevor agree to end their criminal partnership while remaining friends. Afterwards, Michael receives an email from the CEO of Merryweather thanking him for taking out Devon, as he was able to buy back Devon's company shares at a reduced price. He lets Michael know that no reply is necessary and to not mess with his business ventures again. Franklin is first seen on a repossession job with Lamar soon after a chance encounter with his future crime partner Michael DeSanta, who unknowingly directs them to their assigned repossession, and later Franklin and Lamar are assigned by Simeon to repossess a bagger in a Vagos-controlled area of Vespucci. While searching for the bike, the two are confronted by the Vagos and a shootout begins when Lamar pulls a gun on them. The duo is then forced to fight their way out of the neighborhood. They find the bike, but the owner was killed during the shootout. Knowing the repossession is meaningless, Lamar takes the bike for himself and Simeon blames Franklin for the bike's theft. While recovering a BJ XL sold to Jimmy DeSanta, his father Michael, who had been hiding in the back seat, holds a pistol to Franklin's head. Under orders from Michael, Franklin drives the car through the window of Simeon's dealership, receiving a payment from Michael himself for doing what he called a job well done. Because Franklin had driven through their dealership and Lamar didn't return the bike, Simeon fires the pair. After losing his job at their dealership, Franklin approached Michael about a drink he offhandedly offered him when he cost Franklin his repo job. Franklin helps Michael rescue Jimmy from his yacht, which was stolen with Jimmy on it during an attempted sale. Later, after Michael catches his wife Amanda cheating on her husband, Michael and Franklin chase the tennis coach to a house in the Vinewood Hills, believing the house to belong to him. Michael and Franklin use a pickup truck to pull the deck down, destroying the house, and after returning to the designer residence, drug lord Martin Madrazo appears and reveals that it was his lover's house, not a tennis coach's. He attacks Michael with a baseball bat and demands that Michael pay for the repairs to the house, which will cost around $2 million. Franklin is brought along by Lamar to kidnap a Paula's gang member named Dee for no other reason than that Lamar saw opportunity. He and Lamar meet up and travel in Lamar's van to Vinewood Boulevard and encounter Dee down an alley, but he makes an escape on a motorbike with the two in hot pursuit. With the help of Lamar's dog, Chop, the two succeed in catching Dee. However, they are forced to free him when Lamar inadvertently reveals their location to the police while talking on his mobile phone. Things took a turn for the worse when Stretch returns from his prison sentence and goes to a drug deal at Rogers Salvage and Scrap, which was actually an ambush. Stretch kills Dee and the trio escape, with Franklin angry at Stretch for coming back. After some time has passed, Michael contacts Franklin to enlist him for the Evangelico jewelry store heist, which Franklin accepts as he sees this as his first legitimate payday and a major opportunity to prove himself. The heist is successful and Madrazo receives his money, with Michael and Franklin splitting the rest between themselves. Michael, under orders from the FIB agent Dave Norton, infiltrates a morgue and kills several guards. In a panic, Michael calls Franklin and reveals that he is affiliated with the FIB, though Franklin continues to trust Michael due to the latter offering him help while he was in a tough financial situation. Franklin also decides to work with Michael in hopes that there will be better payment from jobs with him. During his various jobs with Michael, Franklin is introduced to Trevor Philips and Lester Crest, two of Michael's acquaintances from his former bank robbing days. Franklin's work causes him to distance himself from the families. When Franklin returns to his house, Lamar and Denise heckle him for his disloyalty, as Franklin explains that he doesn't want to be caught up in the routine of gang life again and wants the opportunity to make a success for himself. Trevor certainly appears, wanting to make new friends. Lamar informs Franklin that Stretch has arranged a drug deal with some ballas and Trevor decides to join them. The trio, along with Chop, decide to drive to a house in Grove Street where Lamar is offered a sample from a cocaine brick and is about to buy it before Trevor intervenes. Trevor snatches the brick from the dealer and discovers the brick is actually drywall. A shootout erupts and Franklin, Trevor, and Lamar are forced to fight their way out of Grove Street when their van is disabled. Moments after the shootout, the LSPD show up to chase them. Franklin and Trevor follow Lamar through a narrow alley into the Los Santos storm drain. They steal 3 jet skis and head towards the open sea, eventually evading the police. Should Franklin follow Lamar, he tells him that he thinks Stretch set them up in an attempt to kill Lamar. Eventually, Franklin and Michael are convinced by Trevor to steal an experimental superweapon from a private security company called Merryweather. The heist is a success, but shortly after, Lester arrives and angrily tells the trio to put the weapon back as if they take it. They will be hunted by every no agency on the planet. While Trevor wants to keep it anyway, both Franklin and Michael agree that it isn't worth it. Trevor concedes and arranges for it to be taken back. Franklin gets employed by billionaire Devin Weston, who asks him, Trevor, Michael, and Nathan Lamar to steal some rare cars for him so that he can export them to Asia. He also gets employed by Lester for several assassin jobs, which allow him to move to a spacious mansion which belonged to Lester, but needed someone to live in it to make it seem legit. Unaware that Michael and Trevor were hiding in Trevor's Sandy Shores trailer after a job from Madrazo went south, Franklin begins looking for them, arriving at the condo Trevor was using as a Los Santos base to inquire with his associates, cousins Wade and Floyd, about the matter. Franklin finds that Trevor has been targeted by the remaining O'Neill brothers, who are angry and vengeful at Trevor due to his earlier attack on the O'Neill household, resulting in the deaths of most of the O'Neills and the destruction of their farm. Franklin chases the O'Neills, who crash because of an elk on the road and escape into a forest in Ranton Canyon. Eventually, Trevor and Michael arrive by helicopter using a rifle fitted with a thermal scope. Michael shoots Walton and Wynn, but can't get a clear shot of Elwood, who is hiding behind a rock and firing rockets towards the helicopter. With the help of Chop, Franklin locates and kills Elwood, after which he and Chop are picked up by Trevor and Michaels and safely returned to Sandy Shores Airfield. Franklin helps Trevor and Michael rob the Blaine County savings bank, as it contains millions of dollars deposited there by Blaine County's corrupt law enforcement, who extort money from all the local wheat farms and meth labs. Using stolen military body armor and machine guns, Trevor, Michael, and Franklin and one gunman successfully rob the Paleto Bank, taking a small cut each and giving the larger profit to Haynes and Norton so they can purchase the required equipment for a robbery at the Humane Labs and Research Chemical Plant, much to the team's irritation. Franklin receives a call from Lamar, who informs him that he's stolen the final car on Whetstone's list. Franklin meets Lamar and the two drive to Little Bighorn Avenue, where Trevor is waiting with the Packer filled with the other cars the groups have obtained for Weston. Franklin drives the car onto the last remaining spot on the Packer, after which he, Lamar, and Trevor then begin the drive to the drop-off point. When the police discover the cars and give chase on the way, Franklin decides to unhitch one of the stolen cars, a JB700, and uses its weapons to destroy the police cars. Trevor keeps the Packer steady while Franklin makes his way along the cargo carrier, eventually reaching the JB700 using the 700's caltrops and newly included guns. Franklin manages to take out the police pursuit. They drop off the cars, but Devin angers the trio by refusing to pay them, promising to invest their money and pay them at a later date. Annoyed, Franklin calls Michael but discovers that his phone is down. Confused, he calls Lester, who relays that his phone has been on and off since he left for Ludendorff, and suggests asking Trevor about it. When Trevor encounters Franklin at his aunt's house, he inquires where Michael is, to which Trevor explains that the Los Santos triads kidnapped Michael while they were in Ludendorff. Franklin asks for his help, rescuing him, but Trevor refuses, claiming Michael is dead to him, having discovered that Michael was responsible for a set of robbery that they took part in many years prior. With Trevor's refusal to join him, Franklin decides to rescue Michael alone. He eventually tracks Michael's phone signal to a slaughterhouse using an app sent to his phone by Lester. After a shootout, Franklin succeeds in rescuing Michael, and the two make their escape from the abattoir, where Franklin learns that Michael had aligned with Norton in order to get out of his criminal life and distance himself from the borderline psychotic Trevor. Franklin and Michael are called for one more job for Steve Haynes, breaking into the FIB building and removing incriminating evidence, as the research lab raid had resulted in his arrest, damaging his reputation. Infiltrating the building, the team manages to recover the data and escapes. They meet up with Lester and celebrate their victory with alcohol. After Michael leaves to settle things with the FIB, Franklin relaxes with Lester. A while later, Franklin is visited at his house by his ex-girlfriend Tanisha, who tells him that Stretch set Lamar up again with a large group of ballers who are holding him hostage at the Paleto Forest sawmill. While Franklin is initially reluctant to help due to Lamar's stubborn insistence on sticking to a lifestyle that has done nothing for them, he is eventually convinced to do so. While on his way towards the sawmill, he asks Lester to contact Michael and Trevor to aid him in rescuing Lamar. The trio arrive and proceed to take out the ballas. While bringing Lamar home, he and Franklin get into a small dispute, arguing about Franklin's many efforts to save Lamar from problems he got himself into. and Lamar's feeling of abandonment on Franklin's part, though they agreed that Stretch likely sold out to the Ballas while in prison. Franklin advises Lamar to remain civilized, to abandon his gangbanging style, and get a proper job. After Lamar is dropped off, Franklin is suddenly confronted by the FIB agents blackmailing Michael, Steve Haynes, and Dave Norton, who tasked Franklin to kill Trevor due to his violent behavior and general liability. Franklin refuses, asking them to recruit Michael to do it instead, but Norton explains that Michael can't because Trevor doesn't trust Michael and won't allow Michael to go near him. Franklin and the team plan and begin their final heist shortly afterwards. They succeed and come off with millions of dollars in gold. After the heist, Franklin is visited by David Weston, and you all know how the ending goes. While busy doing the devil's tango with Ashley, Trevor's attention is caught by a news report about the robbery of a jewelry store in Los Santos after a witness claimed one of the robbers quoted a movie phrase that was a favorite of Michael Townley's. Stunned, he grabbed a beer and walks out of his trailer to process it, only to be confronted by Johnny for doing the devil's tango with his girlfriend. While trying to avoid a confrontation between himself and Johnny by simply walking away, he is pushed to his breaking point as Johnny continues to express his anger. Trevor, no longer able to ignore Johnny's rage, starts making jokes about his meth addiction and mockingly invites him to have tango, joking that this is the reason for the friction between the two men. Johnny lays his guard down and tells Trevor that he still loves Ashley, to which Trevor responds by hugging and consoling Johnny before he finally snaps, suddenly grabbing Johnny by the neck and throwing him to the ground, followed by smashing his beer bottle against Johnny's face and stomping repeatedly on his head, killing him, as Wade, Ron, and Ashley watch in horror before he storms away. Knowing that Johnny's gang will be outraged over their leader's callous murder, Trevor decides to preemptively wipe out the Lost MC and their meth business from Blaine County before they have a chance to exact revenge. He drives with Wade and Ron to a Lost hangout in Grapeseed where Terry Thorpe, Clay Simmons, and other members of the Lost are located. After announcing and mocking Johnny's death, the members of the Lost retreat to their main gang hideout to notify the rest of the gang. Trevor aggressively follows them there in his Canis body with Ron and Wade tagging along. After he chases the bikers, Trevor can optionally kill Terry and Clay by shooting or running them off their bikes. When they arrive, Trevor, alongside Ron and Wade, attack the hideout and wipes out a number of the Lost members there. Afterwards, he orders Wade to find out where Michael Townley lives. In the meantime, Trevor and Ron do more work, including attacking the trailer of Azteca's leader Ortega, along with optionally killing him and taking over an airfield run by the Lost MC after they vandalize his trailer as revenge for him killing Johnny. Trevor attempts to do business with the Chinese triads led by a man known as Wei Chen, who wants to be a reliable partner to help expand his business operations in Blaine County. Wei sends his son Tao Chen to Blaine County along with a translator to meet with Trevor, who attempts to show them his meth lab. During the tour, he is forced to hide the translator and Tao in a freezer and face gang members who want to kill Trevor for killing Ortega. Trevor manages to kill all the attackers, however this results in the triads cancelling a potential deal with Trevor and choosing to do business with the rival O'Neill brothers gang. Enraged after learning this, Trevor decides to kill the O'Neills. On their way to the ranch, Trevor receives a phone call from Elwood O'Neill, who invites Trevor to talk so they can smooth the issue over. But Trevor declines the offer and lets Elwood know what he plans to do. A short while later, Trevor receives news from Wade that two people named Michael Townley live in Los Santos, but neither match Trevor's description, as one is an old man and the other is in kindergarten. However, a man that matches Michael Townley's profile named Michael DeSanta lives in Los Santos, has 2 children, and is married to a woman named Amanda. Trevor recognizes his old partner's alias and decides to take a trip to Los Santos with Wade. Before leaving, he briefly visits the Lost MC's main hideout as a new chapter was recommissioned there to continue business. He destroys their camp entirely with sticky bombs, removing the group's presence from Sandy Shores once and for all. Afterwards, he arrives in the city and locates Wade's cousin Floyd's apartment, deciding to stay there despite Floyd's protests. Trevor then tracks down Michael to his home in the affluent district of Rockford Hills, surprising and shocking everyone in the house who all believed Michael's words that Trevor was likely dead. When Trevor asks where Tracy is, Jimmy reveals that she is auditioning for Fame or Shame. Trevor and Michael rush to the Maze Bank Arena, knowing well that Tracy will humiliate herself with her terrible dancing on TV. The two disrupt the audition, where Tracy is just as surprised as the rest of her family to see Trevor. When the presenter of the show, Laszlo, begins to make inappropriate advances towards Tracy during her dance, Trevor and Michael become angry and chase Laszlo to the Los Santos River, where Trevor humiliates the reality TV star by making him take off his pants and dance while Trevor films it on his mobile phone before leaving. After learning that Floyd works at the port of Los Santos, Trevor forces Floyd to take him and wait to the docks disguised as a dock worker to see if anything worth stealing is present. While they are there, Trevor learns that a private security force named Mayweather has a freighter ship containing secret cargo. Assuming the object is variable, Trevor plans a heist to steal the cargo for himself with the help of Michael, whom Trevor feels that he owes him one. Before the planned robbery could go underway, however, Trevor along with Michael are contacted by a highly decorated yet highly corrupt FIB agent named Steve Haynes, who for assistance in extracting a prisoner being held by the IAA. Before the operation is underway, Michael introduces Trevor to his recently acquainted friend, a family's gang member named Franklin Clinton. Trevor assists in the operation by flying the chopper used for allowing Michael to rescue the prisoner from the building, which he properly keeps for himself afterwards in lieu of payment. Trevor later visits Franklin's neighborhood, telling Franklin and his friend Lamar that he is looking to make new friends. He accompanies the pair on a minor drug deal at Grove Street set up by the fellow gang member named Stretch. It goes relatively smooth until Trevor intervenes. Attempting to take a sample of the cocaine brick they were going to purchase, he snaps the brick in half, revealing the key inside, that it was actually a piece of drywall. A gunfight breaks out, and the three have to fight through a group of oncoming ballas. The LSPD arrives, so Lamar leads Franklin and Trevor down into the Los Santos River. Hijacking jet skis from a rapper's professional photo shoot, the trio escape via the river from the oncoming police. Trevor is brought back to work for the FIB once more, this time to interrogate Ferdinand Karimov, the Azerbaijani man he helped rescue from the IAA. Trevor extracts information out of Karimov by torturing him while Steve Haynes observes and asks the questions before relaying the answers to Michael and Dave Norton, who are supposed to find and assassinate alleged Azerbaijani terrorist Tahir Javan. And after the job is done, Haynes orders Trevor to kill Karimov and dispose of his body before leaving. Instead of following Haynes' orders, Trevor helps Karimov escape by driving him to the Los Santos airport and tells him to run away in order to become an advocate against government-sanctioned torture, despite the fact that Karimov lives in Los Santos, has American citizenship, and has family living there as well. Eventually, Trevor gets to put his heist into motion and manages to steal the target cargo with the help of Michael and Franklin. However, Michael and Trevor's old contact, whom the former had recently been working with again, Lester Crest, arrives to discourage Trevor from taking the cargo, as it is in fact a super weapon that the US government were planning to trade to the Chinese and will stop at nothing to recover it, especially if it is in the hands of a person like Trevor. Trevor initially refuses to give it up, but is forced to do so when Michael and Franklin agree it is not worth keeping due to its dangerous nature. Following the heist, Trevor receives a call from Elwood O'Neill, who threatens to kill Trevor for killing his brothers and destroying the O'Neill family ranch in Sandy Shores. Trevor ignores the threat and invites Elwood and what remains of his family to come and find him in Los Santos before hanging up the call. Getting over the failed heist, Trevor continues to do jobs with Michael and Franklin, including robbing money from an armored car and helping to steal luxury vehicles for a billionaire named Devon Weston, the latter of which they are not paid for, greatly enraging them. Eventually, Trevor takes a job with Michael that involves assassinating the cousin of Mexican mob leader Martin Madrazo for planning to testify against him in a court case, with Trevor being under the assumption Michael brought him on to help case Madrazo's house. When he mentions this, Michael informs him that they weren't going to rob Madrazo, which annoys Trevor. After Michael shoots down the plane that Madrazo's cousin was flying on, Trevor finds the crash site and kills the cousin, who survived the crash and recovers the testimony. As Trevor drops him off at Madrazo's ranch, payment and negotiations fall through and he witnesses Madrazo mistreating his wife, Patricia. Trevor, having developed an infatuation with her and already being in a poor mood over not getting to rob Madrazo, severs one of his ears and kidnaps Patricia, forcing himself and Michael to go into hiding at Trevor's trailer. During this time, the pair are unable to enter Los Santos without being attacked by Madrazo's men. While in hiding, Trevor continues trying to run his business, kills what's left of the O'Neills with Michael and Franklin, and helps rob a bank in Paleto Bay in order to secure funding for another FIB job, which then requires him to help Michael and Dave Norton escape the Humane Labs research facility as they try to steal a neurotoxic chemical being developed there. Eventually, Michael replaces Madrazo with an artifact he and Trevor steal from a Merryweather train, while a reluctant Trevor returns Patricia to her husband and whom he threatens further violence should he ever mistreat his wife again. With his problems with Madrazo not taken care of, Trevor and Michael are once again able to safely enter Los Santos. Upon Trevor's return to Floyd's apartment, he encounters Floyd's girlfriend, Deborah, who is returned home from a business trip overseas. Deborah quickly becomes annoyed with Trevor's presence after suggesting that she caught crabs at the conference he attended and that they were regular little something, and eventually breaks down crying and makes a mocking proposal to marry Deborah and Floyd. An enraged Deborah brandishes a gun at Trevor and Floyd picks up a nearby knife after mustering some courage, to which Trevor tells him that they are not very nice. In the ensuing chaos, Floyd is shot in the head and Deborah is stabbed to death. After leaving the apartment, a blood-stained Trevor encounters Wade, who asks where Floyd is. Trevor lies to him and says that Deborah and Floyd mysteriously disappeared and probably won't come back. Wade and Trevor then move into the Vanilla Unicorn strip club after taking it over by murdering the previous manager. There he meets with Michael, Franklin, and Lester with the plan to rob the Union Depository. In order to do so, they survey the depository for any possible escape routes. Michael and Franklin observe by car, while Trevor and Lester observe by helicopter. After meeting up with Michael at his mansion, Trevor tries to convince Michael that they bust Brad out of prison and start robbing banks like they used to do years ago. Michael refuses, however, due to the fact that he has a family and wants to make movies, which irritates Trevor because of Michael's reluctance to talk about Brad and Trevor's suspicions about what actually happened in North Yankton and who was really buried in Michael's grave. Trevor deduces that Michael betrayed him and flies back to North Yankton with Michael in pursuit. Trevor arrives first at the graveyard and exhumes Michael Downey's grave. His suspicions are confirmed when he finds Brad's decaying corpse in Michael's place. After a standoff at the grave, which Michael somewhat explains the deals that took place between him and Dave Norton, Trevor, feeling hurt and betrayed by Michael's revelation, flees when the duo is ambushed by Wei Cheng's triads, who had followed Michael from the airport, hoping that he would lead them to Trevor. As Trevor flies back to San Andreas, he receives a phone call from Wei Cheng, who threatens Trevor, claiming that he kidnapped Michael and that he will kill him if he does not surrender his business in Sandy Shores, mistaking Michael as Trevor's gay lover due to the fact that they had lived together in his trailer for the period of time while Madrazo was after them. Trevor ignores the threat due to his newly ignited feud with Michael and tells Cheng to do as he pleases. Much later, Trevor meets up with Franklin at his aunt's house in Strawberry. When Franklin asks him about Michael's whereabouts, Trevor becomes agitated as he reluctantly tells Franklin that Michael was kidnapped by the triads before punching a nearby pedestrian and leaving, requiring Franklin to rescue Michael. At some point afterwards, Trevor wakes up drunk on a small island off the coast of Palomino Highlands, surrounded by the bodies of lost MC members, presumably having been killed by Trevor. Although he now considers Michael to be his enemy, Trevor, aware that he and Michael need each other to pull off the Union Depository house and refusing to allow anyone but himself kill Michael, nevertheless assists him after Michael is ambushed by the FIB, IAA, and Merryweather at the court's center. After helping deal with an incident where Lamar is set up by a stretch to be captured by the Ballas, the heist is successful as Trevor and the crew manage to escape with tons of gold worth millions. After that, the ending ensues, and well, you know what happens.